Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are in YouTube and watching, you can click on the link below and actually join the conversation. If you're here as an attendee and you see all these panelists and you listen to us and think that you might be able to contribute something, that you might know more than us, you might. And we'd love to have you. So we open the doors at 6. You can come in as early as 6 and we'll all be sitting there chatting. Can't promise what we're going to be chatting about, but we're all kind of warming up and getting ready to go. We open the mic checks at 6:40, between 6:40 and 6:45. And once we open those mic checks, you can't come in. So you have to be here. The one exception we make is on Saturday for the educators. They can come in 5 minutes before the top of the hour, before 8 o'clock. So at 7:55, we'll open this back up again for the educators to come in and get their mics checked. And then we'll have the second hour. The first hour is all just general Q&A, and that's really up to you. And probably more than any other show you'll see, this is a show that is driven by the audience. So the questions that you ask, what you vote on, that's what we're going to talk about. I can't promise it will come up to an answer, but it'll be an interesting conversation about it. So you're driving the topics in that area. So we're really dependent on you. Right now, we've got 6 or 7 questions. We'd love to get 6 or 7 more from you to make sure that we have enough for the show. So if you're thinking about those things that you weren't sure about or still floating around for you, this is the time to put those into Makana. If you need a link to Makana, it's in the chat. Once you're in Makana, you'll see recent questions and popular questions. Every second hour is about something specific. Mondays are kind of a wild card. Tuesdays are audio. Wednesdays are camera. Thursdays are special guests. Fridays are event driven and production driven, and then Saturdays are education. Sundays we just kind of meander about and talk about whatever we feel like talking about. It's kind of like the 6 o'clock hour, but the whole time. So anyway, so it's a more relaxed conversation. If you are interested in sharing this, you can actually share this link. I'll put it in Makana. You don't share your own link that you get every morning. Share this one. That way you'll come in as people will come in as themselves as opposed to you. Bill, can you go ahead and did we lose Bill already? He was here and then he was gone. Guy, you may get put on the hot plate sooner than we expected. Are you ready to grab the questions?
Rock and roll. Ray Franklin says, my ATEM Mini Pro passes audio, but does no control volume or delay. Windows 10, Scarlett V3, or with direct mic. All cables have been replaced. Is it Windows or ATEM problem? Version 8.5 on ATEM? Thanks.
I'm not sure how the Scarlett is involved in the pipeline. So for the ATEM to have control, I'm just wondering whether the Scarlett is where your mic is. Like it has to. The only place the ATEM is going to have control over the audio is through those little 1/8" jacks or embedded into a camera. So the only reason I'm kind of fixated on that Scarlett is that I don't know why you'd have that in the chain as a part of your audio chain that would affect the ATEM. John and then Jeffrey.
It says Scarlett's where the mic is. So he's running the mic through the Scarlett, I guess, into his PC.
Yeah, then the ATEM's not going to have any control over that. The ATEM's not going to have any unless you're doing some kind of out. But if you have a Scarlett, your audio chain is bypassing the ATEM, so you wouldn't have any control over the audio in the ATEM. It has to go into either the 1/8" jacks, unless that's what's happening, Ray. If it's going out of the Scarlett somehow and then back into the but it has to go through the ATEM for it to control it. It doesn't have any kind of access control. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's probably going through the Scarlett into Windows. If it is going into the ATEM, it should have some sort of control through like 3.5 millimeter to 3.5 millimeter, maybe headphone to 3.5 millimeter. Maybe there's a small problem there. I don't know.
I think that you're getting the audio. It's in the 1/8" jack. I just don't understand. I don't understand the Scarlett in that pipeline. I wouldn't go through it, I guess is what I would say. I think that what's happened. I think that what's happening is you're getting the audio with what you're doing from the Scarlett. It's directly into the computer somehow. It's whether you know it or not. I think that's what's happening, and that's why you can't control it in the ATEM because it's the ATEM doesn't have any impact on it. But you don't need a USB adapter for the XLR mic if you don't need one. You need to just go straight. I would have the mics, figure out a way to have the mics go straight into the into the ATEM. Yeah. Well,
So looking at a picture online, it looks like that there's line level outputs on the back of the Scarlett if it's a 2i2. So he would need to take the analog line out and then into a mic 1 or mic 2 on the ATEM Mini, and that way, and switch it to line level input on the ATEM Mini. So that's what, so 1/4 inch jacks to
I would not
1/8
do that.
stereo.
Like I think having that Scarlett plugged into the computer is all kinds of trouble. Like, you know, like
But
you
how's he
need,
going to get his XLR mics in?
well, I think that you could have something that would convert the XLR mics to 1/8 inch jack, but I don't know if I would use something that's connecting to the computer as a device.
Yeah,
I think that
he would need to take the
I'm
computer
almost
part out of
certain.
it.
I'm almost certain that there's some. No, but I'm saying that you can even a little mixer, you know, before it gets to the thing, but I wouldn't have something plugged in that's showing. I think that the problem here is that you somehow the computer is pulling the audio from the Scarlett because it's connected to it. I think that's what's happening here. Go ahead, John, and then Peter, and we'll move on.
Yeah, it looks like he's getting phantom power from a Scarlett.
Now, I
to run the
understand
microphone.
I understand now that it's being used that way, but connecting it to your computer is all kinds of like it.
Yeah.
What I would do is connect your Scarlett to another computer, not the computer you're using, and just see if you're getting actual audio through the system. But I
Yeah.
think that there's some confusion in your app about pulling audio from the Scarlett, and that's why it's not affecting it. Go ahead, Peter.
I'm using it exactly the way he's trying to use it, except, I mean, I just have to remember to tell, in my case, it's Mac OS, that I'm using the USB input from the Scarlett. It works fine.
Yeah, you can do that. I'm saying if it works fine if you're not trying to push it through the ATEM. Like
Yeah,
I
no,
wouldn't try.
Don't try. It's two separate things. I have the ATM is handling
Right.
the video, and
Right.
the Scarlett's
No,
handling the audio.
I think that'll work fine. But if you're trying to pass it through the ATEM, you shouldn't have something else. You shouldn't have two things. I mean, you can just know that. But I think the confusion here is that the Scarlett's plugged into the same computer that the ATEM is sending.
No,
to.
I have made the mistake of accidentally routing HDMI output from my computer into the ATEM audio, and then wondering where the audio went.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the issue, though. Well, let's go to the next one. Next question.
Next question is from Jeffrey Reyes. It says, Alex, for simple switching in Zoom, you've recommended software like MimoLive, but also the ATEM Mini as opposed to the screen share function. Which do you prefer more?
For simple shows that I'm serving up content to, I generally just use MimoLive for it, just because it's just not a lot of hardware. Like I don't have to think about it that much at all. Just kind of, it's all there and I can pump stuff into it and it all works. If I'm starting to use external sources like other cameras or computers and so on and so forth, then I prefer ATEM Mini. For us, we have a larger system that has, you know, all the tools that we need to possibly push into it. So for instance, we do what's called produced webinars. So they go into Zoom webinar because our clients are used to that. So they're like, oh, we just want a Zoom webinar. Okay, we can do that. But would you like people to be in little boxes and super sources and lower thirds and playback and an ASL person over here and, you know, all these other things? And they're like, yeah, that would be good. So then we basically just run a show where we're connecting each person. It's a funny way to do it, but we have each person is coming in on their own Zoom room. Then they get mixed into our system. Then they get pushed out to Zoom again, like back into the Zoom webinar, but just as one camera feed. And so that's the biggest version of what we do. And then but the smallest version is a MimoLive on an iMac that just plays out video to it, you know, and and that's my, you know, if someone's asking, we want some slides and we want some videos and might want some music under the countdown clock. I want a countdown clock. We want, you know, those kinds of things, all those little bits and pieces, then we will just use MimoLive is a really lightweight way for us to do that. You could use vMix, you could use a lot of other things for it. And then as soon as we start getting into something more complex, then we start going to, if I'm doing it and I want to, like when I do presentations, sometimes I'll be using the ATEM Mini because I'm cutting between a couple computers and a camera and overhead and showing you something. So then that becomes what I prefer. And then we go up from there. So I don't like using the screen share because it changes the state for the viewer. And so it's a very, I find it to be very disruptive. And so I also don't like the low frame rate. And so what I do is I just try to build expectations around 640 by 360. There is I've seen the little button that says 1080p for the webinar participants, but no one's given it to me yet. So not that I'm bitter. So anyway, but it has been emailed to me like, hey, do you have this button? And I'm like, oh, I want that button. If I had that button, I would never use screen share again, which is probably why they don't hand the button out very much. So, like I would, because then it would be perfect. Anyway, so when we get back to 720 or 1080 for the participants, I think that I would never use screen share again. The only reason I use screen share is because I'm afraid people can't read interfaces. So if I'm showing off some hard, motion or something like that, I need it. Go ahead, Doug.
So what type of accounts do you have for your Zoom that are the single accounts? Do they have
Zoom
to
rooms.
be? I'm
I
sorry,
have 16. I have 16 Zoom rooms.
So which version of an account? The Pro or the business?
It's a Zoom room. It's its own class. Like it's not a pro thing. It's just a Zoom room. It's $40 a month.
Okay, so you have like 16 Zoom rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, I have 16 Zoom rooms, and then I have 10 business licenses as well. So because that's the minimum to buy, and it's because some of the computers we were using in a different state. And to be honest with you, we're doing so much of it that I'm afraid to take anything out of the system. I'm afraid that I don't think I'm using I don't think I'm actually using the business accounts right now, but I'm afraid to pull them out of the system because I'm so busy. I don't want to break anything in the middle of a show. So, and then that's about it. I mean, we have those accounts. The reason we'd use Zoom rooms over the business accounts is because we found that Zoom was unpinning on us when we didn't expect it to, which is terrifying to us, for it to suddenly jump to another signal. And so Zoom room means that it's in a state that it doesn't change. The only problem with Zoom rooms is if someone mutes their video, it shows our return feed going back to them, which is really a bummer. So hopefully that'll get changed. It just all there needs to be a button is use background use background when solo. That's what they need. It's just when I don't, because right now it's designed to show you your video. Like when you jump onto Zoom to test something, you'll see yourself. That's a good thing. But I need a button that says, no, just show the background. Don't just show the picture that I'm using as background in the room. Just show that. And then it would fix a lot of things for us really fast. One little button. John Preto.
Which device are you using to connect your MimoLive machine into your switchers?
I'm not connecting a MimoLive into the switcher. So I'm, or into any switcher. It is the switcher. Like when I do a MimoLive event, it's only MimoLive, and it's just I got video. I load up the videos and I load up the bits and pieces, and I set up all my layer sets and everything else, and I just run the whole thing out of Mimo. If I'm going to do anything more complicated than that, I immediately move to hardware, and then that hardware is going through whatever I decide to digitize into the system. So most of the PCs that we have that run it, they're almost all Zoom rooms. So I run them. The Mimo stuff is run on a Mac, but the PCs, there's a bunch of Dells, 1Us that are, each one of them has either a Duo or a 8K or whatever, in them, multi-routed Blackmagic cards in them to go for the IO. So next question.
Tony Mobley says, just wondering, ATEM Mini owners on the panel, what is your HDMI input number 4 use case and why?
Go ahead, Victor.
I'll go if nobody's volunteering. Here's a quick Zoom room pull in from input number 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Zoom room pulled back in. So this could be any meeting, and I'm just pulling it in. So that's my input 4 right now. So if you want to pull it like a Zoom meeting into a Zoom webinar, you could do that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I use mine, as I demonstrated with QLab, in order to do things like lower thirds, or I can play a movie through there, anything like that, like you're going to see right here. That lower third right there is input 4 as a screen from my computer, black background, and then I'm able to add lower thirds or play out a movie or whatever I want to show on that screen.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
All right. Jeffrey.
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 So I have mine. I don't have it turned on right now. I have around my drum set, and actually the fourth one is a camera. It's the foot cam. So whenever I have a picture-in-picture, that's of course that camera right there.
John Middleton, did you say?
Just going to say, I think the question may be, I think the default of the ATEM software is the input number 4 becomes your fill when you're doing chroma key. So that my input number 4 is what I use as the fill.
Go ahead, John Pruitt.
I have a weird little lightning cable to HDMI adapter, and I use it for my iPhone for like an overhead or mobile camera on a really long cable.
I mean, my most used configuration is I have a most used is computer goes into the first one, my main camera goes into the next one, my overhead camera goes into the third one, and then some kind of keying or graphics goes into the last one on the ATEM Mini. If I need key fill, I'm usually using a larger switcher. So I just go ahead and I just do Luma keys, on the ATEM Mini. You can do key fill. I just don't do it in that little switcher because I'm using up I'm using up half my inputs on that. Paul and then Guy.
Yeah, I have a 2-port HDMI switcher going into my port 4, and I have one of those HDMI cables hooked up to my laptop, and the other one is kind of flexible. Right now, I have it hooked up just like Guy was showing. I have it hooked into my Portal Plus.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, here's another example. Here's a extreme close-up with a bird dog. So you might want it for extreme close-ups with a PTZ camera where you can cruise around. Pretty crazy detail that you can get with one of these.
And
So
the switchers are really, I'm working on a couple kits for folks that are remote presentation for salespeople. It's something that I'm talking to a couple people about, and they're kind of, just in case you're wondering, it's a pretty big business. No one can show their products up front, close to their clients. And so what I'm working on is building systems that I'm pretty clear that once they get used to using them, they'll never go back to wanting to travel. I mean, they might want to travel because they like traveling, but they won't do it to show off their products because it's way more efficient to, you can pack your meetings closer. And when it comes to purely a salesperson making more money, on their commission, they'll stay in a lab that is built out to show out their product before they'll go to meetings. Because the key is make sure that you have, close up cameras and make them programmable and, make it easy to switch between them and converse. And you can project a lot faster and to a lot more people. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I was going to say, I'm really boring. I'm camera 1, 2, 3, and 4. The output then goes to another ATEM Mini, which has the graphics and punches it into Zoom.
That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Still $600 or whatever, and you got 2 switchers in line, and it all does the thing. Yeah, that's great.
And the Zoom feed can be remoted. We've got about a 40-foot cable going to the other one, so that it can be closer to the data jack.
That's awesome. Yeah. Next question.
Let's see. Next question is from Chris Russo from Red Hook. I think he has a relationship with Emily. That's Emily's husband, right? Chris Russo, yep. Emily Russo's husband. Paul Wallace mentioned that Guy helped him connect 2 meetings to a Zoom room. Is it possible to talk a little bit about the setup? Sure. Yeah, you're just taking the HDMI out. So actually, there's a USB-C on the back of the portal, and then you convert that to HDMI, and then through a switcher, you can just bring it in. The issue is the audio. So do you want one meeting to talk to another one? That's where it starts to get complicated, and you need to do some mix minusing with a mixer, with an audio mixer. So John Ilston, you got something?
I was just going to say, yeah, we've talked about the audio issues with the portal, but for, I think what's the list price is $270. I think you could get discounts to the portal to about $240, Portal Plus. It's a great auto follow camera. It's a good looking camera and it does auto follow. And I haven't found one that's under $200 or in the under $300 range that has as good as video. I wish they'd fix the audio on it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the audio is a big issue. Like the other day, I was talking about trying to get my audio in here through a Bluetooth interface on my mic. But I think there's all kinds of potential for the Portal Plus if the app developers get after it. There's not that many apps right now, but
think that
you do have the Zoom app.
I think that part of the problem is that I think that what the Portal's doing and what a lot of these speakers are doing is pretty complicated and pretty dependent on the mic array that they have. So I think that you may find that a lot of things don't work when you plug something else in. that the Portal knows with a lot of these devices, whether it's the Portal or the Alexa or whatever, what they have done an enormous amount of testing on, an enormous amount, like it's hard to imagine how much, is what do different accents sound like in different environments, with different distances with that mic. and usually that is like AI, where you're basically repeating the same. You have lots of different people in lots of different houses repeating the same words over and over and over again, so that it can figure out what those mean. And so all those commands, you put another mic in, and none of your commands would work. In that thing. I mean, it would probably defeat the entire AI system to change the mic configuration. So I'm guessing that that's probably why they're hesitant to make that easy to use, because because it would cause a lot of trouble, for the system to act as people expect it to. That would be my opinion. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the Bluetooth directly on the Portal, using the Portal communications and audio, works great. It's on the Zoom app, they haven't enabled anything other than their microphones, and their microphones have a challenge. They have
so it does work with Bluetooth mics.
The Portal in its native apps, when you're reading stories, you could use a Bluetooth system, but when you use the Zoom app in the Portal, it only uses the 2 microphones.
And is that something that is a Facebook tool?
It's a great tool if you're a grandparent. You tell stories, it puts funny faces on
but
you.
It's Facebook. It's Facebook's.
It's Facebook's tool. It's part of when you're doing a messenger.
But to get back to it, I think that they want you to be in a certain state that they control to do what they're doing, because the audio is both the audio and the video tracking that they do and some other folks do are pretty complicated. Next question.
Next question is from Andy Dolph. In Zoom webinar, we generally use a pre-show title slide or video. Is there a way to screen share it without showing a thumbnail of someone's camera, even if cameras are all off? I've seen it happen sometimes, but can't figure out why.
Well, what I do is, to go back to that, is to use something like MimoLive or something else that's going to pipe video in as a video, and then I spotlight it. And then that's going to be, for webinars, that's going to lock everything out. You're not going to have anybody pop up. You're not going to see any kind of overlay, because a lot of times webinar will tend to have that picture-in-picture that pops up with someone over top of it. But if you do what I do, which is, have something that's going to, and the nice thing about something like MimoLive or OBS or whatever you're going to use is that you can still have your webcam as an input into that system. So I can still talk to people, but when I want to show a video or I want to show a still, I just pop it up, and it fills up that screen, and I do spotlight. And that's the easiest way to take over that screen. So anytime I'm inserting movies or stills for events, I'm using some version of a video input, whether it's a hardware switcher or a software switcher, to insert that into a video feed from the perspective. And what I would say is that at the beginning of shows, people have a tendency to use stills. I don't recommend it. My recommendation there is to always have some version of a countdown clock, something moving for the audience. If you're just in a webinar, they're coming for that webinar, probably doesn't matter. If you're going out to a social network, stills are devastating. Like a still up for 5 minutes, you've lost 75% of your audience, like easy, maybe 90%, because people just come up, they see it in Facebook, and nothing's happening, and they think it's not really happening, and they just move on. And so you have to have a countdown. So the best, and we've talked about this before, but I'll just say it again, the best to start a show is a pre-show. half an hour before your show, you've got a program. You've got things that are, you've got people talking, you're interacting with the audience, you're warming them up. Think of a comedy, if you're going late night or whatever, you're getting everybody warmed up. You're interacting with them all. That is the best way to do it. The second best way is to play videos. You play video, but still things that are messaging and moving. That's the second best way to do it. Third best way to do it is to do a countdown clock. Fourth best way is to do a still. And the worst way to do it is just to start really fast, right into it. Because remember that all these social networks take 3 to 5 minutes to warm the edge. So when you say, I'm going live, Facebook doesn't go, I'm going to tell everyone. They're going to say, I'm going to tell these guys, and then I'm going to tell these guys, and tell these folks, I'm going to take these folks. And it takes 3 to 5 minutes for Facebook or YouTube or whatever to tell everyone that you're live. So they're all missing that. So just know that you need small talk if you're going to do that. The announcements that I do on YouTube are designed for people who watch it later, and they're designed to let the length of time that I take to spool up is the length of time it takes YouTube to get everybody to notified. So if you're wondering why I'm spooling up in that 5 minutes, it's to spool up the viewing audience, which is 45 people. But the point is that it's just a habit that you make small talk in the first 5 minutes because no one's watching. So if you're from the time you go live, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm also wondering if he could just have a dedicated graphics laptop that just pushes in that title slide, and if it's got to be spotlit to not show. I'm looking into the question. It says without showing a thumbnail of someone's camera. So I'm also wondering if that second camera in the advanced share screen settings would be helpful to take it over everything.
It just won't show any thumbnail if you're doing a spotlight of a screen. It's never going to show a thumbnail ever. Go ahead, Victor.
What I do.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the concept of the ATEM, I do my countdown clock, right in QLab and just send it to the ATEM number 3, and there you go. That's what you're seeing.
Right. Everyone's like, and then Peter, you're doing that with Mimo. Oh, you're muted. Peter, you're muted.
Yes, I am doing it with MimoLive.
I don't get the whole written out thing. The reason I guessed the Mimo really quickly, I was like, Mimo's countdown clock has this thing where it spells out the whole thing. I'm kind of like, it takes a lot of.
But I just use the tools of I just.
Well, no, there's another countdown in Mimo that is just the numbers, and then what Oliver showed us how to do like a week ago is to pack those numbers. You can make your slide and then match the numbers and put them in there. And so it looks pretty nice. I still do some design on my numbers. And so I still do other things, but it looks pretty cool. Next question.
Next question from John Pewitt. A friend of mine is looking for a sort of PA system for her yoga classes. She says wired is okay. She is also extremely price sensitive. Any suggestions?
So John, is it for a yoga class that people are actually coming to, or is it online?
It's actual. She's teaching actually about 60 kids at a local boys and girls club.
Okay.
She actually got into it because some of the kids said that there were no black people that did yoga, and she's a black yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I got to show them. So she just wanted something where the kids could hear her voice and didn't have to spend any money to speak up.
Good, Jeffrey, and then Paul.
So a couple of years ago, I bought these. It's actually a Pile, and these are Pile speakers. They're about $139 on Amazon. And the cool thing is they're self-powered speakers, so you can plug in 2 sources into the speaker, and you can also plug in music, and you have a remote control and Bluetooth ability with this speaker. So it'll do a great job with what you're planning for it, and it's probably the lowest price I've ever seen for all that functionality.
Yeah, and you can get lots of little wireless ones. I mean, the hard part really is yoga and wired. It doesn't seem like it would go well together. So you kind of need a wireless system somewhere in there, I think. Otherwise, you get all tangled up.
That's what I suggested. She kind of rejected it. She's like, no, it's too expensive. Well, I'm like, okay.
I think I was going to have a
hard
time.
I would recommend, let me see if I can throw it up there. This system, which is wireless. And the only caveat with this is whether you go with D band or K band. And I don't know if it's in the budget. They said low budget. I don't know if $300
that's probably more
low
than
budget or not.
Yeah, I know her budget, and we're looking sub 100.
Yep.
Okay,
So
rule out the Samsung airline.
Yep.
But,
that's why I put extremely in. I figured this
good.
was a good challenge for this group.
Yep, Roscoe.
Yeah, go down to Goodwill, buy the heaviest speakers you can find that have 3 tweeters in them. They're going to run you about $40 around here. Then you go and look at what amp the guys have behind the counter, because they've got one that they're using to listen to their music, and it's going to have a price tag on it. It might be about $40. And then get a Bluetooth wireless receiver. I got it off Amazon. I think it's from Monoprice. And anybody's iPhone, anybody's computer. I happen to have a little white cart. Put a couple of straps around it, and that thing can blow a lot of power through the room, and it's really cheap, but it's great.
Yep. Next question.
Next question is from TJ Asher. Alex, you mentioned you are playing with Dolby Atmos mixing. What tools are you using to mix Atmos?
So we're right now, I don't have to mix too much into it in true Atmos. So I'm kind of in this in between, but to do it proper, well, and even not properly, but you're talking about CalRec boards, which are, get pretty expensive. They start at 35,000 and up. Right now we figured out how to do it in a QL1. You probably even do it in an X32, but it's 251. You got to do 251 mixes together, to get that to work. But you're not really, it's not the true live, Atmos board that you would have. Those start getting really expensive really fast. So we're doing surround, but not really, for live mixing, which is what I'm kind of focused on. It's really a 514 mix. So to do it really in Atmos is not something that we're doing yet. So of course you can, in post, you've got lots of tools, so I'm trying to figure out how to, so most of my work right now dealing with, again, what I'm dealing with specifically is 514 is in either Logic or in Resolve. Most of it's in Resolve, and we're really just working with the tracks. I'm not doing that much to them. So and anyway, and I'm not personally doing anything with them. I'm playing with them and then asking people to do stuff, and so then they can't make it to office hours. So anyway, so no, Mickey, we'll have Mickey talk about it at some point. So Mickey's is helping me with a bunch of this right now. So and so that's the we can talk more about that. We're probably gonna end up talking a lot more about surround because I'm becoming very quickly obsessed with it. So anyway, next question.
Another one from Chris Russo. When a Zoom room is connected to a meeting, is there any advantage bringing in the video through the room versus bringing it in the meeting as a regular participant? The camera source would be a virtual webcam streaming in an NDI input.
Isn't that what we just talked about?
I don't think there's going to be any quality difference in bringing it in from the room versus another participant. I think once the room's in there, it's going to upgrade everybody to 720. I don't think it would have to be the room that brought the video in that would make it any better. It's the same, at that point, it's the same digitization. Like it's not, there's nothing the Zoom room, I think, buys you other than a more dedicated workspace. So I don't think it would, I think that would be the only thing is that you have all those little controls, little pad. What are you using, Guy, to control? Are you using iPads for yours? Are you using an iPad?
Yeah, just using a regular iPad. And just to be clear, I think what he's asking is there any difference between basically a room showing up video and a regular participant? And there is no difference there, but what is the difference is if somebody has a regular meeting and you come in with a room, it'll upgrade it to 720p. I think that might be where the confusion lies, is just what does a room do? besides give you the clean aperture, how you're using it. But for just normal meetings, people are at 360p. A Zoom room comes into that meeting and it doesn't even have to have any video and it'll upgrade it to 720p. That's the big deal about them right now.
But it still records at 640 by 360, right?
No, it gives you, your recordings are 1280 by 720. Yeah.
My recordings
Really
to
gorgeous.
YouTube, my streams to YouTube are.
Yeah, your local recordings will be the same resolution that yeah.
I got it.
Not the cloud. I don't think the cloud. I haven't checked the cloud.
Yeah. Next question.
John Pruitt, when would I use Loopback as audio? Sorry, when would I use Loopback versus AudioHijack?
You actually end up using them together a lot, so it's not really an either or thing. Loopback is routing, in AudioHijack is processing. I mean, that's the way I think of it. Is the the AudioHijack will say, I'm going to take all this audio and do all these things to it, but you still got to put stuff into it and take stuff out of it. And that's where Loopback comes in. So in Loopback, you're going to say, I'm going to send it to there. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to create a device that AudioHijack can see. And then I'm going to grab onto the AudioHijack device and then send it out to other things. So that's what how they work together. I'm starting to get my head around why they made it two products, because I just keep on feeling like it should be one product, because I just buy them as a pair. I don't buy them separately, because you use them together so much that anyway, go ahead, Roscoe.
It would drive me nuts if Loopback had the interface that AudioHijack does. AudioHijack has these little modules that like to move themselves around and reconnect, and you have to fake it out to, build these false things. So I like the fact that Loopback is more straightforward. What I wire together stays wired together. The only reason you do use Loopback without AudioHijack is if you have other audio apps that you needed to, route together. But otherwise, AudioHijack has some Loopback capabilities in the fact that it can talk directly to various apps. And so buy AudioHijack first, see if it will get you, because it will get into Zoom. Once you screen share in Zoom, Zoom puts a little, whatever module in that other devices can talk to, such as AudioHijack, and route it out through Zoom. So you don't necessarily need AudioHijack to get out to Zoom. I'll stop there.
And go ahead, John.
I'm not really necessarily looking just to use it for Zoom, although Zoom is a use case. What I'm looking at is particularly Discord and feeding in sound effects for my D&D games. So I'm a DM and I like raising the level just a little bit. And so I have some sound effects that I like to feed in.
To take our last question, it'd be really fun to have everybody play in surround sound, where you put like little things behind them and give them cues and everything else. It's like taking it to a whole nother level. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the PC side, I think you would use something like Voicemeeter to do Loopback. Am I correct or not?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Now, the PC people tell me that a lot of the audio routing that Loopback does is actually built into the operating system. I'm not a PC person, can't confirm that, but they say they don't need Loopback because they can do a lot of talking between audio apps by just using the operating system.
Next question.
John Prado asks, Alex, thanks to what I've learned from office hours, I watch TV with a new critical eye. I was wondering, when they are shooting a scene with 2 or more cameras, you don't see the other cameras that would otherwise be in the field of view. How is this accomplished?
Yeah, go ahead, Kev, and then TJ.
It's called rehearsing. Camera rehearsals, blocking, technical rehearsals, all variations of the same thing. Just as you'd rehearse with actors, crews have to work where the location is, what cameras, and obviously what the director's wanting to see. So majority of the time, it's single camera is usually easier. But if you do multicam and you're doing across, you've really got to block your scenes much more closely. Either keep your footage loose so you can get in and out quickly, or you keep it really tight and then you make sure you keep your cameras well out of the way. But it's basically just rehearsing.
There is line of direction, so all the cameras are generally on one side or the other. So you'll notice that when you watch it carefully, you're going to notice that there's a couple of things that it's just something we've gotten used to showing the viewer that all the cameras, there'll be a line of direction in the shot in every scene, and all the cameras will be on one side of that, and that makes it easier to shoot. But it also, from a viewer's perspective, it makes it easier for me to orient myself, because everybody's on this side of the everybody looking is on this side of the screen or that side of the screen, and I can tell where they are in the scene by having them all in that same orientation. You'll notice if you watch a show that if two people are talking, they stay on the same side of their screen, the same third of their screen, the entire scene, unless they cross in an open camera where you can see it. So a wide shot where they clearly cross that line, crossing the line. One of the best examples that I use for this is the a really good example is if you watch the I Know Kung Fu from The Matrix. It is literally a master's course. I could literally teach people how to shoot film. I have shoot film on that one scene, because it's just they're using these little push-ins, pull-outs. They're very carefully managing that line of direction. They're crossing over. It is an unbelievable. They do a steady cam where they cross the line with the steady cam. They go all the way around it and then go into a shot in the correct line of in the correct framing. It's amazing. Anyway, so a lot of times, the other thing is you'd be surprised at how few multicam shots there are. When we shoot film, it's very rare that we shoot with more than one camera. We just do the scene over and over again from the other angles. And because the problem is that trying to make both actors look great in both angles at the same time is very challenging. Now, sometimes they'll do it as coverage just in case. I mean, some people will want to do that, but that's a lot of infrastructure, and it fills up the room for the actors to have all those cameras and more people around them. I'm always amazed that actors can do what they do. Like the fact that you've got 60 people with 60 people around you, and you're not even working in order, and you have to be in that scene. I mean, that's what makes great actors great actors. Is this? There's a lot of people that can act or can be expressive or whatever, but being able to stay focused and in that space when all that stuff is going around you is a kind of amazing, And so you want to, on the set, like when they had that, I remember the thing with Christian Bale, he blew up at somebody and they leaked the audio like they were going to throw him under the water. Anybody who's worked on a set thought that guy had it coming. No. I mean, anybody who's worked on a set did not have it like it was Christian Bale's fault for him yelling at that guy, because he's in a really, really intense scene and the guy screwed it up, wasn't on, and so a lot of times that single camera is, it's almost all single camera. Action shots, a lot of times you do multi-camera. You might have 6, 8, 12 cameras because you only get to do it once. So you're covering yourself to make that work. But most of it is all singles. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then TJ, and then we'll move on.
Principal vector line, 180-degree line, all different terms for the exact same concept of keeping the cameras on one side of the line. There is the time you break the 180-degree rule, and that's when you're doing a horror flick, because then the audience doesn't know where the next camera angle is going to come from, so it startles them. So the goal most of the time is do not startle the audience, but if you want to, you can use it to startle the audience. And the last thing is why is there always an open chair, open section at every dining room table? And that's to preserve the 180-degree vector.
Interesting. TJ.
Just to follow on what you said about doing the scene over and over and shooting it from different angles. The other thing that's amazing about really good actors is their ability to nail that performance the same way almost every time, so that the other actor that's acting with them can emote and get that feel from that other actor.
Although I've seen a lot of actors that they never do it the same way again. It's whatever moment they were in at that moment. And it just completely is a different. If you take 40 takes with them, I did one where I saw an actor take 18 takes, and every single one of them was amazing, and every single one of them was different. Anyway, let's move on. We're running behind. Go ahead, next question.
Next question is from Brian Anderson. Has anyone here compared MimoLive to OBS relative to system load for a simple show like Alex was describing earlier? Presenter slides, video play out into a Zoom meeting.
I can almost guarantee that MimoLive will have a lower impact. Peter?
Not only will it have a lower impact, but stability is also. I had serious problems with the OBS, whereas MimoLive stayed rock solid.
I mean, in general, I will say that I have as someone who has developed code for multiple platforms at the same time, a dedicated code on one platform, whether it's PC or Mac, is always better. Always.
Yeah.
You know, if you just say, I'm only going to make it for this one platform and I'm going to take full advantage of all the APIs and full advantage of all the infrastructure and full advantage of those things, it's always going to be more stable and less resource intensive than making generalized code that has to work across both of them. And so you're either going to handcraft it as a developer, or you're going to give up a bunch of features that you could have had, you know, there. And we stopped developing on the PC because it was just 90% of our support calls were PC and 10% of our sales were PC. So we were like, okay, let's just stop doing that.
But
John,
I would also point out that when we do big data centers, we try and make sure we have support contracts for open source software. And,
right.
And if you can't find the general purpose OBS user doesn't necessarily realize that he's on his own. He or she's on his own.
Yeah, go ahead, John, and then Jeffrey.
I just say MimoLive is our most reliable and stable, but Oliver has put so much into it that I can break it, but it's only because I'm trying to push it faster or harder than my machine has the capabilities of. But in terms of simple programs, it is rock solid.
Yep. You got John, and then Jeffrey.
OBS runs better on the PC than it does on the Mac. I've used all these video switchers for years and years. If you think OBS is bad, don't try Wirecast because it blows up like crazy. But as far as video switching goes, all you need to do is watch Twitch. OBS it reminds me of the race car industry. Those kids push OBS and are on for hours and hours and hours and hours at a time. And so it's tried and true and tested OBS on the PC.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick, and then we're gonna move on.
I'm just curious because I know OBS doesn't use Metal. Does MimoLive use Metal instead of the OpenGL? Because that's a big difference right there.
I think it does. Yeah, we'd have to ask Oliver, but I'm pretty sure it uses Metal at this point. I think it switched over a couple of years ago. Most Mac only developers have switched over. Next question. Are you there? Did we lose contact?
Sorry.
Okay.
Next question's from Paul Wallace. What's your all-time favorite keyboard and mouse? And for this one, I was trying to grab my mouse here so I could show it. It's this ancient Microsoft trackball. These are now on eBay for big money because those who love them, and now they've driven up the price. They're really.
John Pruitt, real quick. We're just going to go around the court. You got to do it real fast.
Yeah, I don't actually have it, but it's the IBM ancient clicky keyboard. Those things were amazing, and I can type faster on those than anything else. Don't have a favorite mouse.
John Ilson.
Yeah, I was going to show the effect. I turned my camera off.
Oh, there it goes. No, your audio's off too.
So the mouse, bad demo. The Logitech M3 and the little buttons on the side will let you mute and unmute and turn your camera off and on.
Someone else had there. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So that, yeah, I used to like clickety clack keyboards because I felt like, I did type faster with them, like big, thick, whatever. But now because I take notes during shows, what I really want is a glass keyboard. And they used to make them that you don't make any sound when you're touching them, so that I can take notes. Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
I like this mouse, and I'll second the IBM Click keyboard. I used to work for IBM, and I was an IBM reseller. I have about 50 of those it's stashed away in a cargo container. They're great keyboards.
Next question.
Next question's from Hasmuk. Zoom meeting or webinar? Struggling to figure out one over the other. Show not streaming anywhere, all in Zoom. For cooking and language show, which Zoom option works best? Both live interaction with students, not using Q&A or chat.
I do a meeting. If you're just interacting with them all and they're all in Windows and you're not trying to manage large numbers of people. I mean, once you get over 100 people, I would lean maybe 200. I would tend to lean towards that. But now that we have Q&A available in meetings, or soon to be available in the meeting, they announced that. They announced it in Zoomtopia, right? Yeah. So, that's going to make it, the two of them, much more in parity. I still like webinars for what we do, even at the numbers we have, because there's a lot of people that choose not to be part of it. They just want to watch. They don't want to have their window up. They don't want to have their name up. They don't want to have anything else up. So that's the only thing to think about. If you think that they want to just be a list, and not, necessarily be, just be able to be part of the chat. I mean, that's the thing to think about with all of these is some people just, there's people here. We invite everyone to join the panel, and this is who joined. So everybody else has chosen not to jump on. And so that's the advantage of webinar is that they have made the choice not to do that. And we're going to start bringing people. If you're an educator, I'm going to finish the last couple of questions. But if you're an educator, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, and we'll start bringing you in. Next question.
Next question's from Yvonne of Mercer Island, right up the road from me. I'm running a Zoom webinar with registration next week. My client wants to know how many registrants we have so far. Is there a way to export the webinar registrants who signed up into an Excel spreadsheet? I only see the option to import from CSV, but not export.
You absolutely can. You're looking for an attendee report, and it's often hidden. So if you, if it's, I can never find it without, like, so when you absolutely have a registration report. Zoom has it kind of hidden in the website, but you need to, what I do is I look at an older webinar, and then I go in and I go to attendee reports. It's easy to find in a past webinar. It's really hard to find in the active webinar. And John might be able to help us with that, but I don't, that's the challenge that I've had. For some reason I can't.
Yeah, and the amount of data that the admin gets about every event is really pretty impressive, but it is sort of hard to find.
It is in the web pages, but you absolutely can do it. And we'll try to find it and post it a little later. I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me. Go ahead. And then Bill, can you make me a co-host?
I don't think I have co-host. I just got back on.
Not Bill, Guy, or just let people in. I can't let them in because I'm not a co-host of the show. So
I have the screen up for reports.
Oh, go ahead. Throw it up. Okay. Are you able to? But where do you find that screen without going to a past webinar?
I just went into personal profile. Right below it is the word meetings, and then admin. Under account management is reports.
Okay.
Are the reports the same for meetings and webinars, John?
There are some differences, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, and you can pull up, because I do it all the time, because I have the same question, is people ask me, who's coming?
And hey, Guy, can you interrupt?
TJ, your host, can you let
TJ's
the
host.
people in?
I'm sorry, I made TJ host. I'm sorry, I got it. You just got to let people in, TJ.
I'll try to figure out how.
Or you just make me co-host, and then I can let them in.
Yeah, or I can, either one.
I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. So
thanks,
you guys
John.
Can switch over to the education hour.
You, John.
Thanks, John.
I'll join and listen on phone, but I have to go do stuff today.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks. See you later.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next week. Last question, and we'll jump into education here, and we'll do the mic checks.
Last
TJ,
question here is from.
Did you? Okay, there we go. I got it. Yep. Go ahead.
Last question here is from Bruce. I'm trying to decide between the ATEM Mini and ATEM Mini Pro. I am currently doing all my live streams with StreamYard. When have you found it necessary to have the 1080p recording?
For me, the only thing about the Pro that I'm interested in is the ability to do a multi-view out of it. That's the thing. Like, if you don't think you need the multi-view, you don't need it, in my opinion. Go ahead, John or Roscoe.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I would. I'm trying to think. The recording's all the same. Everything's pretty much the same. But you're right. It's the multi-view. If you need to stream, but if you're using something else to stream, the only thing about it, the real kicker is, it's really hard to run a real show without a multi-view, without seeing the other sources live, and previewing your lower thirds and previewing all those things. That's where it becomes a big deal. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The one thing you can do is you can turn multi-view into the program window. You can then use that to bring into like a video assist or to a capture card to your desktop. That way you're recording if your StreamYard goes down, your recording stays solid, and you can run it that way. That would be the only other thing I could think of.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think if you're using something else to stream, that would be the thing that I would pay most attention to. Let's go ahead and do a real quick mic check. I think we're starting with Bill. Do you want to run the mic check starting with Emily?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Hi, Emily, and good morning. And let's see what your audio sounds like.
Oh, I'm really nervous because I have a new setup. Ooh, and I look like I froze for a second. Can you guys hear me? Am I okay?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you're on your regular mic. It sounds like you're on a computer mic or something like that. So check your Zoom settings for microphone first.
yeah.
Let's-
Hold on just a sec.
And as we're doing this, just remember if you have questions about education, we already have some stacking up. We've already got 5 questions in, but if you have other questions about education and virtual production within learning, then start putting those questions in right now.
All right, so now I
That's much
have
better.
my Scarlett on. I probably sound better because I'm actually coming through my real mic. And it looks so
You're a
18.
tiny bit hot, just a tiny bit.
hot. I'm going to move the mic away.
There you go. Yeah,
All right.
Verse square principle always works fast. Let's move on to Bruce Francis. Go ahead.
Good morning from Naples. I just learned this morning that my dogs are barking in the background. If anybody can hear them, how does that sound? Am I way off?
You're a little quiet. The dogs are really nice in the background, but I think you need to come up a little bit.
I'll try to raise it a little bit here. Let me get going down. Okay, I discovered that that my old hometown Minneapolis is snowing and all kinds of hail today. So being down here in Florida feels nice.
Your numbers look good. So we're
How's
going to
that
go to
look?
Chris,
Okay,
Chris Clark next, Aaron Graham after that, and Kent after that. Go ahead, Chris.
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona. The weather is such that people in Arizona are feeling smarter and smarter about living in Arizona. And that'll be true from October through March. So,
You sound really good.
I'm
You can
on-
come one click or two down. Hey, you're just a little tiny bit hot on the meters. So other than that, you're fine.
Done.
Aaron Graham next, then Kent Kersey after that.
Good morning from Boston. It's a nice, cool morning. We finally got some rain, which is helping my garden for the last week that it'll be alive. So I'm hoping that my meters are good.
You sound great. The levels are great, and it's great to have elementary ed in the house. Kent Kersey is next, then Steve Croft after that.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. So this is the first time I've been back on for a while, and looks like it's a little bit hot, maybe. Is that right? So I'm going to go down a little bit, a couple clicks on the ATEM Mini here. And
I'd split that
maybe I
difference.
went too far. Yeah, let me go up one more click and see what's happening here. Looks like we're close to the right place here. So
Yeah, I consider
all right,
that a win.
Thank you.
You're in good shape.
Sweet.
Thanks, Kent.
Awesome.
Then Stevie, and then Steve Catton after that. Go ahead, Stevie.
Right. Good morning, guys. It's been another wonderful week in the land of the North.
You're way down. We need to come
I'm
up
way
a good
down.
chunk.
Okay, good. Someone was messing with my mic while I was gone. So is that any better now?
You're still not coming up, so we need more
little
volume
bit
if you
more.
can get it.
All right. All right. Testing, testing, giving you a little bit more. See, this is what happens when I let my son use my computer for Zoom meetings for school. All right. Is that any better on my side? I'm seeing it
Yeah,
stopping
that
at
was
20.
that
so
was a significant improvement.
Okay, good.
All right. We have Steve Cotton, and then we have
Yeah.
somebody in the panel. You don't have a name on it, but the gentleman wearing a black shirt. If you go up to your panel, the little picture, and click on the 3 dots, the ellipsis in the upper right-hand corner, you should get a little thing that says rename. No, I'm not seeing that for you.
It's there.
It popped in. It's Trevor.
It just popped in.
Okay.
Hello, test
There we
1,
go.
2, 3, 4. This
All
is
right.
Steve
So let's
Cotton.
finish. Stevie just finished. We're going to go to Steve Cotton. Go ahead,
Hello,
Steve.
hello. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Coming from the Bay Area, Northern California. Good morning. It's early. Well, not that early, but
The
early.
meters are showing you're
Test 1,
hot.
2,
I don't
3,
hear
4.
you as being that hot. So just come down a little bit. But the target here is to try to get that number to be -20. But it takes about 3 seconds after you continuously speak for that meter to register your level. So you
Okay.
have to speak continuously
Speak
and then look
a
at the
little
number.
bit. Absolutely. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a test of the Emergency Broadcast Network. Please do not call the radio station.
So it's showing 16. So you need to come down just a little bit to try to get down to -20. So let's go one more time.
Yeah, hello, test 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Yes, this is another test. And for breakfast this morning, I had a wonderful little cup of yogurt, and I'm ready to go.
Now you hit it. Great job. Thank you very much. Trevor Walker, good morning, and it's up to you now.
Good morning. Hopefully the setup's not too bad. I've been scared ever joining this because I don't know how good my stuff actually is.
You sound
Looks
fine
like I'm hot.
qualitatively. Your level is hot. So try to come down a little chunk and then speak continuously for 3 seconds, and let's see what the meter says.
All right, I'm coming to you from the very nice high desert in California. How am I doing on levels now? Looks better?
Just a hair down. You're real close. So another 3 seconds or 4 seconds of speech, and we'll see if we can get you in there.
All right, still talking on the microphone. It looks like I'm getting right around, you said -20 is what I'm aiming for?
Yeah, looks good.
You're close enough now. Thank you very much. Is there anybody that I've missed who's from the new education group? I don't believe so. So Alex, it's back to you.
Thanks, Bill. And Guy, do you want to go ahead and jump into the first question?
Yeah, first question's from Roscoe Jones. What 3 things would you tell a first-time 3-camera live to drive student director? She also has 3 camera people with no live experience and 1 week to practice her shots during rehearsals. This will be shot 1 scene at a time, so think 10 to 15-minute chunks. The JVC cameras will be ISO.
Are you still here? Hold on. Everything
Yeah, I'm
rearranged.
here.
So, there we go. Sorry. All the tiles got rearranged, and I was like, I gotta find it. What's the subject matter?
It's a play. We're shooting plays, and she's a director that's shot single camera up till now, and it's just really this is kind of a holdover from the last hour, maybe a little bit. But what 3 things would you tell her up front? And communication kind of ideas, because has to develop this pattern between her and the cameras to give them direction. Maybe a couple others. I'm just looking for ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big things that when I'm teaching multicam for a director. Now, a lot of times what I do is I direct cameras, and then I move the camera operators to direction so that they can hear. The hardest part is having everybody never have done it before. When you have the director with experience, they can drive a camera operator to where they need to go. The main thing is that for the director, the big thing is that you want to think about pacing. You don't want to stay all close and all wide. You want to think about, I'm going to go, when you're watching the scene, what do I want to jump out? What do I want to make a point with? That's a close up. And then the other part, what do I want to make sure you understand the scene? That's a wide. And so those intense and light, there's an iambic pentameter, so to speak, of how you do that, of just kind of feeling the scene. And especially if you get to do it in rehearsal, you get to feel like where you really want to be in that area and so it is just feeling it and experience will help a lot with that. The big thing with camera operators is having them know that when you say ready camera 2, they stop doing whatever they were doing. That is the most important thing in the world. Is you say ready camera 2, that means just keep doing what you're doing. Don't do anything else. And so but that's probably the thing that kills us the most is camera operators making adjustments when they're live is the number one thing that new crews have a hard time
and this
with.
is live to drive, and everything will be ISO'd and cut and post later. So really, she's setting up really good shots.
But it's still really important for her to cut the show.
Yes,
because
exactly.
otherwise,
is it being recorded as live? Then are you recording as live?
We're recording it as live for her to review every night or day. But the thing will go into post, and all will be cut ISO'd.
Okay,
the main thing you want to be careful there, and the reason I'm sure that you're having her cut it live is because it's really easy to get, but all 3 cameras are readjusting at the same time. If you're not calling the show, you're not conscious to making sure that you've got live cameras that are able to be cut to during that.
Yeah, to cover your backside, as it were, on that. If you've got 3 cameras, I did a lot of camera to a wide shot, keeps everything wide. One on another. How many characters are in this? Is it people?
It's a 4-person. Play.
Okay, fine. So you
bedroom.
can have, if you know who's going to be talking, if you've got a script, I keep 2 cameras on 2 shots on either of the 4, 2 on the wide, and then wherever relevant, either move in or zoom into whoever's speaking. But you really want to rehearse it and have a camera shot list.
Yeah.
So each cameraman knows that at this point in 15 minutes, we cut to camera 2, you want a 2 shot, and you've always got the wide to cut back out to in the post. So you've always got a safety shot. Yep. So that's how I do that.
Yeah, the lock off wide is the key. Is definitely for every show I do. Yeah.
I looked
That's-
at the back.
A 4K camera 4. Everything else is going to be 1080p.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
perfect.
there
And
you
then
go. There you go.
you can play it. You can definitely do it safely, but the other thing to think about is really creatively trying to use those cameras the way. And as you rehearse, you'll figure out which ones you want to get to. Especially rehearsal. If there's any way that you can very quickly after rehearsal look at those ISOs and cut them, together and just see what it felt like between rehearsals. It's also really useful.
Right.
But,
We're actually going to be recording the live cut using
Yeah.
the ATEM Mini
Right.
onto the little USB drive, so she'll be able to see that right away. I don't want to take up a lot of education
No,
on
it's
this
good.
because it's kind of
Yeah,
crossover.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Chris and then Bill.
From an educator's point of view, Roscoe, you probably already do, but I would suggest that for the first rehearsal, you do the first scene in all the wrong ways that are possible. In other words, for the director.
Let her do it, or
So, yeah. Have her over practice the opening scene, trying different sequences of cameras and so forth, and then that becomes your basis for saying let's do it the third way that we tried, and it reduces the anxiety and the rapidity with which the system moves.
it's interesting, Chris. I would have thought giving her the instruction, which was be clear with your cameras, good is the enemy of great when it comes to moving camera shots and stuff. I would have given her that up front, just so she knows what the goal
and I
is.
admit that is that if it was me, just because I'm always looking for expediency of how to get someone up to speed really fast, I would do the first rehearsal and just cut. I would have her just listen to me do the first rehearsal, and then I would just hand it to her. I would just sit down and I go, just listen to me, and I'm going to do this thing, and you're going to watch it. And this is how we learn as human beings for the last 2 million years. We learned by sitting behind somebody who knew what they were doing and watching them do it, and then following along. And that's from a crap. It depends on how many rehearsals you get. To get up to speed.
Just real quick, there's some amazing stuff on YouTube behind the scenes in the rooms being cut or shows being cut.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I think some of them, when it's the professionals involved, though, it's almost too fast. One of the things I do if I'm working with people who have never shot cameras before is make sure you let everybody know ridiculously obvious things like 1 is live, ready 2, 3, give me a 2 shot. And then when you cut to 2, the next time remind them that 2 is live, 1 is now ready, and somebody else is in. It's just a rhythm, and you have to get into the language of this.
Yep. Next question.
Next question's from Emily Russo. I have reading teachers that need to record a multi-view practicum using tools of a program. We have Zoom, 2 Chromebooks, and PC connected to a smartboard. There is 1 full remote student and 3 to 6 kids in the group. Ideas to make this look good?
Emily, can you describe this a little bit more?
Sure. The kids the teachers have to record a practicum for a specific reading company, and they want to see what the kids are doing. They want to see the teacher implementing it during the class, the course. But what's throwing the wrench into it is it used to be you just had a camcorder and you would follow the teacher around and then zoom in on the kids' work and do what you needed to do in the room. But because we have the kid at home and it's a hybrid, so some of the kids are at home on one day and some of the kids are in the classroom the other day, and it's a small group. So there's 3 to 6 kids actually in the room. And then there could be 2 to 4 kids on the Zoom meeting, and we need to see what the kids are doing, but also the teacher interacting with the students.
Right. So and is it over Zoom, Google?
They're
Meet?
doing Zoom. So they have Zoom meetings, and the students can log into Zoom. The teacher can log into Zoom, and she can share from the smartboard to the Zoom meeting as well. Mm-hmm. So I was like, do I spotlight all of the cameras in a row, and we just arrange it so that it's here's the teacher moving around the classroom, here's a zoom in on the kids' work, the kids working, and then one whole shot of the room. I don't know how to make it look good.
Well,
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's different scales. So if you're analyzing it, then I would do a Zoom grid, and just decide what all my inputs are. If I'm not trying to make it look good, look good, but I want to see everything in real time together, and I'm not going to spend a lot of money on hardware. I would just, do that. If you're trying to turn it into a product, again, you start getting into a computer for every participant. That's the far end, that you're just recording all of it, synced together and then cutting it back and forth, and that will look great. Like that will look, recording every ISO and then recutting it is the far end of making it look great. All in Zoom, and a grid is the in between. Then you could also have it where your remote participants are in the grid, and you're taking camera shots of the stuff that's in the real world and the stuff that you have access in the real world of, little recorders. I think that we've seen these little $35 to $50 or $100 recorders that you can plug into the HDMI that'll just you can just record in H.264 to each one of those things. So that's another way to do that. But that's the range, all in Zoom, all ISO, and then you can start deciding which ones do you want to keep ISOs of, and either group them together or not.
I saw in the settings now in the Zoom meeting that I can record multiple views. So like there's the grid view, the active speaker view, and something else. So you'll get like individual files, and then the teacher could like put them in something and split them together. Would that work? Or
it should. One of the just test the Zoom multi-track record very carefully. The reason for that is, like, for instance, what we found is that we'll record multi-track of audio, everybody involved, but then Zoom only recorded it when they talked, like when they opened up their mic or whatever. And so none of the tracks lined up, and we were like, what am I gonna do with that? Like it was like completely useless. I was like, I need, if I have 8 people, I need 8 tracks the whole time. I don't need these little clips that only record when they unmuted their mic, and so it was kind of a disaster. So be careful of those ISOs and just record them. But you're right. You can record a speaker view and the grid view all at the same time. So then you could be selecting or just letting it run in speaker view, whoever's talking, and then have the mic and then have a grid that's going to get that. So that could be a good kind of in between as well.
And do you guys know in Zoom, when you pin or spotlight, like if I had 4 computers going that I wanted those shots and I didn't want the 3 other kids, will those be recorded as just a grid? Or
well, if you do a grid, the grid will always be recorded. And then if you're pinning, that speaker view should be recorded as a separate feed. That's just the close-ups of them.
Okay. I'm gonna have to mess around with it, but I didn't know if there was an easy, like, hey, yeah, do this. Okay.
It is, but that's the way to do it, though. You can definitely get the grid and a speaker view, and that's going to get you a long way there. And then it's just deciding whether you're going to record everything else. Now, the cool thing is that if you fed everything into Zoom, if you have a computer or something that's always feeding, so that all video feeds that you need are in Zoom, then you're in one editing place to cut between stuff, and you don't have a bunch of external recorders, and you don't have a bunch of other things. So if you find a way to get all feeds into Zoom, you at least have a grid of all of it, and then you can use the pinning to record. And remember, you could have a couple computers. You can keep on adding computers and having them record their view of things. So the step down from what I do, which is that I control all the audio and video from an ISO computer, is other people will take 2 or 3 computers and have them ISOing each computer recording, screen recording just their view of, and they just pin on one person. So you can always grab certain ISOs by having a separate computer do that as well. You just grab another laptop and have it record. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just, like I said, I was looking to make sure I wasn't overthinking it a little bit, because I was playing around with recording, but I only have 3 fake accounts that I can like get going at the same time, like join with my iPad, join with my phone, join with the Chromebook, and then my PC. And then it's like, okay, but now if I add the smart board, am I going to be able to pin it and make it look good? And like sometimes it recorded everything I pinned, and then other times it only recorded the active speaker and wherever the mic was getting picked up. So if I muted the other mics so that we didn't have feedback, I was only getting the one camera, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? But I might just have to play around with the settings and just keep doing it till it comes out okay, and then let the teachers have it.
This gets back to why Zoom needs to put an editor class in, like co-host or host. They say an editor, that controls it, that doesn't have all the co-host features. Just I can control what people see. John?
Tangential thought. I know I've been talking to Tucker, and he's been doing virtual machines. He's got 4 virtual machines. My bird's happy this morning. 4 virtual machines with 4 different ISOs running off of one box. Seems to be working okay.
Yeah, so I've seen a bunch of people using the virtual machine, AWS. You kind of set it all up, and then each one of them's looking at it. It's a little bit more of a setup, but not necessarily that much more expensive, Emily. I mean, it's something to think, maybe even ping Tucker on it, because it might be something that Tucker can help you set up, or someone can help you set up, and then once you set it up, it's just turn them all on.
Yeah,
like it's a lot.
Chris, my husband, he's been using it to run his Zoom meetings and different things so that he can. So I'll just ask him how I can make it work.
But you could just spin up a bunch of instances in AWS that are all looking at their own screens. Like that.
Cool.
That might.
I didn't think about that, so that's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I didn't think about. I have access to.
It's perfect. Next question.
Laura Thompson opens up a can of worms with this powerful question. Would Discord be a replacement for an LMS or even a good supplement for student engagement?
I think it's a good supplement for student engagement. I think Discord is great. I mean, it's really important for what we're doing here. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, I tried doing that a little bit, but my administration didn't like that. They get really nervous whenever you have any sort of information outside of the LMS that the school has anointed as the official one. And so they did not want that happening. There's been some students in my classes who have kind of started their own Discord, which I think is great, so they can do study groups and stuff. But yeah, if the administration doesn't have control of it, they get super nervous about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, my point to this is, how do we get administration to accept Discord as a acceptable LMS?
I think that it could be hard, just because I don't think Discord is really built for the kind of privacy rules that a lot of schools have to live inside of. I think it would be easier for you to get something like, I know a couple of schools that use Slack, and Slack has more of the enterprise solutions for every student or every participant, that gives them the control, gives the administration control. So I think that while I feel like Slack is a little behind Discord from a feature set perspective, I think that if I was going to try to get an administration to do something, I'd probably lean towards Slack instead of Discord. I do think it's important for schools to, regardless of what they do, I watch my kids' behavior, and I can tell you that the kids are on Discord almost the whole time during the classes. And so you just, if you don't find a way to get positive control over that attention, they're just all talking to each other. Like it really was an eye opener watching my kids use it, is that they're in like, and I don't know if I should block it or not. I haven't figured out, because it's usually innocuous. I've looked at it, it's innocuous, but it's as if all the students were talking to each other the whole class while you're trying to talk to them. They're all just like, they're moving. So kids these days are moving so much faster than you can absorb, because they've figured out how to do all the multitask, all these things at the same time. And so it's just, it's very hard to, you just have to know that it's happening and figure out a way that you can keep them engaged with what you're doing.
And
Trevor,
the pushback I got on Slack was that we are a Microsoft campus and we have Teams, and they don't see the reason to have Teams and Slack.
Okay, then put all the students on Teams. Right. Well, that's the whole thing. Is like, they don't want to do that. So, that's why you would do a separate one. Is that the argument there is that Slack is for the students and Teams is for the teachers, and it keeps them in two different worlds. And John and then Trevor.
Well, I think the battle of, the administration requires a particular tool. If you go back and look from a student's perspective, if a different teacher used a different tool for every class, they'd be trying to figure out how to navigate 5, 6 different systems. And many times the faculty just don't know all the features in their system. I'm sort of against LMSs totally. I don't think we really need them. I think there's much more effective tools that can be put together that are typically used by students and embrace the teaching learning experience. But I think the reason for having one LMS is the ease of use for the students. And it'd be even easier for the students if faculty on a campus could agree how to use the LMS. Even with a common LMS, some faculty may use a Dropbox. Some people use the grade book. Some people don't. Some people put their syllabus at the top of the page. Some people don't have a syllabus. They have a calendar. That, you know, I try to take a perspective of what is going to make the interaction of the student with the content and the faculty member frictionless.
And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is when we look at nature, there's generalized processes, and then there's, you know, evolution, you know, is a giant agile development process, right? so it's just this that's been running for billions of years, you know, that and you end up with these types of animals that only live in a quarter-mile space and don't live anywhere else in the world because they've adapted to that space, or these bugs that have adapted to this flower, or the, you know, whatever that is. And this entire development. And then there's things like water that is everywhere. And there's things that, you know, like there are thinking about business systems and education systems and political systems in that sense of, you know, I think that when we try to generalize everything, it causes problems. When we try to let everything be different down to the atom, it causes problems. And so there's this, so as I think about education systems, or I've been thinking about them lately, I don't have an answer. It's just something that I'm kind of meditating on right now, is just this thought process of what, because when we look at nature, we look at the ultimate design, right? I mean, nature's been doing this a lot longer than we have. so, you know, like so we always should go back to that as what's working there. How did we get here? And then figure out, that's how I design everything I do, is I just go back and look at the ultimate design and then back into like, how do I apply that to what I'm doing? And I think that sometimes when we try to overgeneralize everything across a system, it causes resistance. And if it's all different, it causes trouble. Trevor, and then Stevie, and then we'll go back to you, John.
Almost afraid to admit this. So I am district administration in my district. And I'm one of the people that is having to make those decisions of what do we pick, what LMS, what.
By the way, I love this. This group is slowly becoming amazing. Like it's been amazing since day one, but I think we may be the only place in the world where we're getting this open conversation between the education designers, the administrators, the teachers. It's just this incredible collection that we're building up. So anyway, thanks for joining us. I know that I know it took you a little while to join, but anyway, go ahead. What's your point?
I'm happy to be here. So we are, at least in my organization, starting to have a real conversation about the fact that all of the students are doing these things. They're in Discord and Slack and all that on their own already. And we're having to start having conversations, not just as administration, but with teachers on control, and when does control matter and when does control not matter. We're trying to experiment. So we're a Google district, and we actually have Hangout and Meets and all that enabled for our kids. We have some controls. We can go in and audit if there's a problem, but they're all communicating already. And it's a lot better at some point just to say, here are the tools. You guys can collaborate. You can meet on your own. You can have, you know, the social emotional interaction. And here's a system to do it. And then at least everyone's going to one platform rather than trying to just bury your head in the sand and say, this is never going to happen. And we've actually talked about Discord, since it is a lot more powerful. And as an administrator, you have the ability to go through and see all these channels. So it's a little bit easier to audit.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie?
Yeah, we are the district I work with, we are a Microsoft district. So we do incorporate Teams into our, you know, conversations, and it's, you know, cross teacher, cross students, you know. And one of the things that I've realized is, as we're all saying here, is that the students, number one, got into that space far quicker than anyone thought they would be able to. Number two, in Teams, if you don't know this, it opens up a class notebook for every team. And the teachers, as we were talking about, making sure everybody's on the same page, some of the teachers don't use it. So if the chat is turned off, what do the kids do? They jump into the class notebook and start their own pages in there and start chatting just the same way. So they find workarounds no matter what the situation is. My son included, he was on Discord, like, who downloaded Discord on this other computer? So they do find a way to get around it. I think it's our responsibility, though, is, you know, and you know, thinking about the administrative side, like Trevor was saying, you know, it's hard to have, as you guys are saying as well, all these different platforms to keep track of, especially for your IT guys in the background, where it's like, you know, the admin says there's a problem with this. All right, I have to go over to Discord, pull that stuff down, and then they jump the conversation from Discord to Slack. I have to go pull that records down, and a lot of the IT guys in the background are just like, you know what, forget this, don't give them anything. So if we could, you know, give them a space where they feel comfortable and able to work and see all this stuff in one, at least in a more unified space, it'll be a lot easier for them as well.
Yeah. John Edelson.
Yeah, I've had two experiences that sort of colored my thinking on this. We had a faculty group that was supposed to be selecting or reselecting our course management system, and they were having a meeting discussing how students use it and how faculty use it, and they were all very clear that this is how it was working. We had the real data in the IT organization, so how the faculty perceived it was being used was totally different than the actual use of it. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. There's this myth of this is how it's being used or the proper way of using it versus actual activity. You can see the traffic, when the students were there, what they did and what parts they reached. The other one that hit me was that for a while, our university automatically set up a course in the course management system for every course. There was a faculty member who was teaching a class, and as his students was leaving, the student said, I'll just meet you on our, at that time we were using WebCT, I'll meet you in the WebCT course. And the faculty member said, I'm not using that. And the student said, no, you aren't, but it's turned on and we are.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what the response to that was? I go, great.
Right.
That's wonderful. It's there. If people want it, they can use it. The students knew how to do it. The decision was, oh, we can't turn them on unless the faculty member says it can be turned on, and it took away a service that the students had access to.
And again, then they're off doing their own thing somewhere. Bruce?
We seem to be at a stage in discussing the use of tools like Discord and all of those, where administration has the issues of control. The teachers are using one thing, the students are using another. Has anybody come up with some ideas of where there could be some way of building it into the curriculum to use these items, of actually making them serve the education process rather than still arguing over whether we should control them or stop them or let them alone? Right now, it seems to be too chaotic, but there's got to be some ideas somewhere for how they could be designed into the system to actually contribute to learning.
I got Stevie and then John.
Yeah, in our space, what we did was we spent a lot of time not only training the teachers, but also the students on the power of the platform. And then spending time showing the teachers, you know, I think for a lot of them, they were like, well, this could be a problem if they're able to talk or share or do this other work. And they, for a very long time, a lot of folks just wanted it shut off. I don't want the kids being able to talk in this space. I just want them to be in my digital classroom. But then when we started showing them the benefits of having those side groups and having those spaces, I think it was more alleviating the fear of what could happen in that space and showing them the potential of that space. Like now they love it. They're able to share videos. They're doing a whole lot of you know, collaborative work in those spaces, but it just took a little bit of time, especially as we were jumping into this, you know how it went. We were jumping in this crazy space. Now give them that space and they say, oh wait, this is as bad as it was I thought it was, or as bad as some of the forums on Facebook or something says it is.
Right.
John? Yeah, it's these tools are not a natural environment. You have to do professional development to show people how to use it. If you just throw it out there and say, let 1,000 flowers bloom and see what happens. And you could look at Zoom. There are a lot of Zoom meetings that are not as well behaved and as functional and as useful as ours office hours. We learned how to use it. And you need to do that for a tool.
I mean, with only a handful of exceptions, we didn't say anybody had to do anything. Like that was the thing. It wasn't, how we got to where we are now wasn't a velvet hammer. Like it just, it was like, like there, you can't, it had to be a clean show. And then there was just kind of subtle pressure to move it in a certain direction. but be also a certain level of patience for it to get there, as far as quality and audio and video and how we interact, and also learning. I mean, there's just techniques that we learned here that I didn't have when we started.
Well, you created the classroom climate,
right,
enforced the behaviors, and it was successful and encouraged people to follow the lead.
Now, the advantage that we had also is that the system is sorting. So the group that we have here now is not the same. There's some people here that have been here since the beginning, but for a large, there's a certain, with schools, they don't have quite that level of flexibility where we can just say the student's no longer going to be here, that they don't know how to interact online, where they have to go somewhere else. And so that also becomes a more challenging thing. Go ahead, Trevor, and then Chris.
One thing too that I think is important, and we've kind of talked around it, is a real quick question on how many kids are going to abuse the system. So there's a lot of this control and fear. We actually had it where all of our kids apparently had the ability to make Google Classrooms. So over the last couple of years, they'd made hundreds of Google Classrooms. So we locked them down and went through an audit. In all those classrooms, no kid did anything bad. They were hanging out, they're chatting, they're talking about school. Some of them, like, this teacher's a lot of homework. None of them actually did anything bad. There was no bullying. We didn't even see swearing in the classrooms. And so I think there's a big fear of what kids are going to do when 99.9% of them are just going to be kids, and it's not going to be anything negative or that you have to worry about, really.
No, absolutely. Go ahead, Chris.
I wanted to say something in favor of Trevor and his fellow administrators. A lot of times I say things negative sounding against control, but the other name for control is behaving responsibly. And administrators are kind of holding the bag for making sure that everybody in the system behaves responsibly, and to anticipate what could go south, what could go wrong. And I'm grateful to the administrators that take on that on their shoulders and keep our kids and teachers as safe as possible.
Yeah, Bruce?
And carrying that same idea a little bit further, Trevor, when you discovered in your audit that none of the kids had done anything wrong over that time, what happened to the system then? What did your group do to the system after you discovered that it basically had worked really well?
We actually kept it off because it was breaking. We use a program called Securely, and we need to be able to manage all the classrooms. And it was actually breaking the tool. That's how we discovered it. So at the moment, we haven't figured out a way to get it back on and keep Securely manageable. But it is something we've talked about re-enabling if we can figure that out.
Okay, great.
And for me, a lot of times, what I spend a lot of time thinking about for events that I think applies to classrooms, but it's difficult, is passive versus active listening. And I think about it all the time, and how do I keep as many people as possible in an active listening mode and not let them go into passive? Because passive for kids means they're doing something else. I mean, passive, when I say passive, I mean someone's multi-tracking now. For the most part, a large portion of our audience is not multi-tracking as much as normal because we have a conversation going on, and when they vote on questions, they're now stakeholders in those questions, and they're thinking about those questions that are coming up, and they're talking to it, and the chat allows them to talk to each other, so that there's a bunch of places for people to have an active, and then we're having this active discussion. But I think that the challenge with students is, and when I teach, I'm always trying to figure out how I maintain their attention all the time. And I'm thinking about how to make it more condensed, faster. I had a teacher did a great job with my daughter. They're learning ratios. And so I'm going to post something for you guys in a couple of weeks. I'm really in a production. I can't do it right now, but as soon as I get out of that production in November, I'm going to post I'm going to take what the teacher did, and I'm going to do it in Keynote. So I saved out the video, and I have it sitting there waiting as my little homework. Because it was great that he did it, because he codified something to the ratios, and I was just like, but if we can make it more condensed and then have that conversation because the students were having trouble with it, they wanted that video, but we have to figure out ways to make it interesting and make it real. Like they're drawing boxes for shoes. I'm like, just go get pictures of shoes, and so that it becomes more real. This is what I'm actually trying to figure out. you know, and it doesn't have to be hard or you know, it will take longer than drawing it on a whiteboard, but it will not. But the question is, how much can we reduce that workload? Anyway, next question.
Bruce Francis asks, in the first hour, there was discussion of spool up techniques to get an audience ready. How could such ideas be used by teachers in starting their online classes?
All right, go ahead, John.
I think getting the students ready for it is very important. We found having music beforehand helps set a tone, lets them check their speakers and do things, and then taking the music down and doing some pre-discussion, the sort of things that happen normally. What we found most distracting and disturbing was when at 2 minutes before it turns on and you're in it and going. I think people need that transition to get centered, get focused, and advance organizer. So we use music because the tempo of the music, if it's late in the day, faster music, early in the day, calming music.
No, and I admit that like for me, office hours is an expression of what I've been doing for the last 30 years, in the sense that when I do any repeating course, I used to teach visual effects at San Francisco State, and half of the class, when everyone got there, I just said, well, I started answering questions 10 minutes before class started. So I would just say, hey, what are the questions that we have? And the students would have, you know, I don't understand this. What funny was, all the students got there 10 minutes before, because they knew that I was going to start exactly 10 minutes before the class started. I was going to start answering questions about what their homework was and what they were working on and everything else. And they'd miss it because we weren't recording it or anything else. And so they would all, so I had, there was a couple complaints at the end about the fact that they had 10 more minutes of class because I was always starting early and they'd be running. They talk about, like, I got this long complaint about someone who had to run from BART every single time because class started 10 minutes early. And I said, well, you know, I'm just answering questions. And they're like, but that's the best part. So anyway, so the thing is that from starting to answer questions, I like to start classes with answering questions from whatever the homework was. And I assign the homework specifically. Everything I do is to drum up questions, drum up interaction. So whatever I send them to watch, whatever I send them to do, it's not so that I can test them later or so that I can figure something out. What I'm looking for is questions. And so, you know, office hours, of course, is a giant version of this. But to me, we learn through that discussion. And so how do I create that discussion? And so usually the first half of my class, when I'm teaching classes that are end over end over end, is just Q&A. It's just Q&A, because then that warms the whole, and then I go, okay, let's talk about what we have to talk about. Well, let's usually it's always like, okay, let's cover the thing we have to cover for next week, you know, and sometimes that's the last 10 minutes of the class is me talking about what we're going to talk next week. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them I'm going to set them up as a teacher, and then I'm going to give them a bunch of movies to watch and some challenges to do. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. So I admit that I've been a conversational teacher for a long time, you know, and it's just, this happens to be a better medium for me, but that's how I warm people up, because it's getting them to do something immediately. They don't walk into a class and be talked to, you know, they walk into a class and they get asked something, you know, or they get to ask something. They get to be part of that conversation immediately. And again, that switches their brain from, especially when they know it's going to happen, from passive to active. Go ahead, Erin.
So the way that I start my class for third grade is we start at 8:50 every day, but at 8:40, I turn on the Google Meet and I have a Bitmoji classroom with a whiteboard of, here are the 3 tasks you have to complete this morning. I try to jazz it up with a cute picture of something out the window, but the kids know that I'm there and I will answer questions all morning. So I'll do a picture in picture and pop in to answer any questions.
That's
So
great.
I feel like they really like that concept that the board changes every day, the picture changes every day. They're looking for something new. And that's also how I engage them. I might say, hey, what's out the window in my slide this morning? And, you know, then they have to go back and look and see what the assignments are. So I think that's a really great way to start the day for my third graders, at least.
That's fantastic. No, absolutely. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I've been starting like 10, 15 minutes early as well. And I created a video that has a countdown and it's counting back. Okay, the class is going to start. I agree. Music is really a good way to kind of get it going and put a track under it. And then I scroll different things, like it's National Pretzel Day or something like that. Today is such and such a day. And these are the things we're going to talk about today, to try to get them interested. And then as people start filtering, and they'll have questions. But this is going on and carrying on until right up until the class, and then I just fade that out, dissolve, and go right into the class. And it's a good warm up. And I've been finding that students are coming a little bit sooner and to see what's going on, because sometimes there might be a question in there, or there's something I try and put a couple of hidden gems in there so that if they were there just a few minutes early, then oh yeah, all right, yeah, that's okay. Now that relates to what was on the screen beforehand. And so some of the students get in there early because they want to see what that little gem is or whatever, or ask the question. So yeah, it's a warm up. You want to, rather than starting just boom, light comes on and go. I've been finding that the students actually do try and arrive early.
Yeah. So Kent and then Aaron. You're a little quiet, Kent. Aaron, go ahead and Kent, work it out. Yep. Go ahead, Aaron.
So to bounce off what Steve just said, I do the same thing. So one of my tasks every day is a question of the day in Google Classroom. It's what I would do in my classroom. And I know this week, the most talked about one was October 14th was National Chocolate Insect Day. And we talked about, would you eat an insect regardless of if it had chocolate? And the amount of back and forth discussion that was on that thread was intense.
That's great. You go ahead, John.
Okay, my greatest.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, am I here now?
Yeah.
Am I here now?
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things is I was doing a bunch of that too, where I was doing different music and that kind of thing. But then I found some of the students just wanted to talk beforehand. It's like that moment where you're in there and you're trying to just connect with the teacher. And I thought, well, maybe they're trying to do that. And then for the first 10 minutes, I show up and there's a lot of students who just want to talk about what's going on.
Well, and yeah, and having one of the things for the chat, what's really been useful for us is Mukana because Mukana's opened all the time, people start talking and chatting in Mukana for us, even though it starts at 6 a.m., I see people saying hi and starting to warm up. And sometimes it gets pretty intense at 5:20, 5:30. Someone says hi and they just show that they're there. And then the discussions start and it's just completely, a separate feed that kind of warms everybody up and gets them to know each other. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. Oh, sorry, John.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, I had a graduate seminar and they were showing up late, and the typical faculty member might just complain, stop showing up late. What I did is I put a $5 gift card on the table in the seminar room, and the people came in and said, "Who's that?" I said, I don't know, but you were here first, it's yours. And then they began to realize there was a $5 Starbucks card to the first person who showed up. Everyone showed up. And then I got into a problem where people, I stopped it. I changed the behavior. They were all there and they said, "No, we're not going to come unless we see that card."
Well, that is a what I call expectation inflation that you have to be super careful of. And you'll see me pull back a lot when people ask for new things, and I go, oh, because I think about can I sustain that? And even now I have trouble sustaining what we've already done. And so, but yeah, with my kids, I know with my kids, I'm super careful about not doing too much positive reinforcement for behavior, because then the behavior becomes attached to the positive reinforcement. And so, you just have to, but yeah, that becomes tricky. Go ahead, John, and then Emily.
That's like the third time that I had a thought and it came out of Edelson's brain or his mouth.
I would worry about that. There are doctors that can help you, John, but we both have the same first name.
I don't know what the age group is, but the kids play so many games these days. Is it superfluous, or would be a cumulative leaderboard? Who gets there first? Who was the best attendance, et cetera, et cetera? Would that not be effective, Alex?
I guess what I found is that it comes down to my kids when I wasn't doing so much work, my kids were always on time for school when I was getting them ready, and never on time for my with my wife, and she was just very frustrated about that. And she asked me why the kids are always on time and for me and not for her. And I said, because you just tell them to get up. I said, I make eggs. And when I make eggs, I make like restaurant quality eggs, you know, like I play really hard, you know, to make a different dish, and it's very nice and it's artistic. And I've thought about it the night before, and I make I make, you know, these eggs. And so, but if you're not there at 6:30 in the morning, no eggs for you. You get like instant oatmeal, you know, like that like I'm not going to make any eggs for you if you're not on time, but like literally to the minute or to the second, you have to be there by 6:30 or I won't make you the eggs. And you just and so the kids were always ready because they were always up to get the eggs. And she's like, there's no way that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it. She had some other, you know, whatever. And I said, just ask him. And she asked my son, he said, because he makes eggs. You know, like, and so the and I enjoy making breakfast, and so it was fine. But the point is that what I'm always looking for is, how do I create something that makes them want to do that, and try to you know, that again, me answering questions for their homework. Everybody was there at least on time, if not early, for my class, because I just dived right into it, and that made it a you know, a thing to do. And then a lot of times I try to create pre-shows. Like we try to create the pre-show for this show. It's really long, but you know, there's 100 people here at 20 minutes after 6. You know, that are already like watching this thing because it's a really fun conversation. Like we've created this kind of whatever, but creating something before it that's worth seeing, you know, is the thing that gets everybody, you know, in my opinion. You know, we do that with seminars all the time. It's called food. like we, you know, we have brownies and we have coffee and everything else. And you get there early so that you can have it. And the key is to take it away right before the show starts. You pull it away, and then people, if they do it, anytime you have, the great thing about classes and what we've learned here is that anytime you have a repeat behavior, you can build behaviors very quickly because you have iteration, you know, and you can train people. It's wetware development to do something by giving them something that makes sense, but it's serving them, you know. That's the key is it won't last if it's not really serving what they need. Emily?
So I'm putting together like a menu for the hybrid remote learning situation that my districts are dealing with. And it's like 3 to 5 minute things teachers can do throughout their virtual lesson to, you know, keep engagement high. And one of the things I came across, which was awesome, was this website called The Kids Should See This. And I'll just put it in the chat. It has like video clips in it. It has stop motion animation. It's organized by like science, space, animals, nature, food. So there are all these little, you know, short, I think there's like over 4,000 videos that are kid friendly and appropriate for the classroom. So for my K-12 teachers, like I was showing them, and I actually ended up in a wormhole with it for like watching video after video. There's a girl on there that has 32,000 dominoes that she took 3 months to put together. And all I could think of, because she does the whole, like she does the destruction and she videotapes it, and it's amazing to watch, but think of all of the iteration it had to go through in order for her to get to that point, and that she stuck with it. And so like for kids to see, you know, the final product is one thing, but then to ask a wonder question about it or put up a blank board and have the kids shout out, we call it shout out. They can type and it pops up on a screen. Like ask a question, like, what does this make you think about? And it sometimes it doesn't even have to be related to what you're doing, because it just gets them excited about something. And if you can weave it into what you're teaching that day, awesome. If not, the kids just show up because they want to see what that random bit is that you're putting out to them. So for my high school kids, they love it. For the little kids, they're just awe. So I think it's a really cool website you guys should check out. I put it in the chat.
I think if I was doing this right now, I would probably have a pre-show set of videos that I collect, you know, that I don't change every week or every day, but I might change every week. Like every week there's going to be, or maybe every day, but I would have something of a collection of videos that are related to it. Like I love this one. I think I showed this somewhere else, but I'll show it again just because it's a new day of the kind of thing that I would probably try to grab here. Let me see if I can do the screen share. Anyway, so I would love to just find videos that are like that. If I was an English teacher, I would be trying to find videos like that all the time. You know, like I would just try to be like, how do I find videos? And then I'd have fun little things that are there that are really funny, or you know. And I think just listening to all of you, I think that talking about it, I feel like I'm not going to do it, but I feel like there's a business model there for yeah, there's an interesting business model there to have that. Like to build all those pre-class videos. I bet you schools would, I mean, I don't know, the administrators here can tell me whether schools would subscribe to that. Like if it wasn't super expensive and you could just get something and it was like restaurants, for instance, subscribe to music for their restaurant and they pick a genre and then they just constantly get a new playlist that is current with the times, but a new genre, and all their music is all managed by somebody exterior, and they pay like $40 a month for it or something like that. And it's just like it, and they just have it. It just seems like it'd be funny you could have a business model. Get all these schools, or just there's a whole bunch of videos that can be used as examples, as interstitials, as pre-show, you know, pre-class or anything else, but just a big collection. If you had enough of it, you could have a pretty large crew sitting there just making these funny videos and things that they can watch. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, and you could also have students maybe do their own, you know, they could make some that you could play in there, you know.
No, absolutely. And then you obviously have conjunction, junction, you know, like my kids, you know, and my kids, if my kids knew that you were going to play, I know I keep on coming back to this, but if my kids knew that you were going to play connections before every like 15 minutes of connections before every class, they would just come and watch it. Like that, you know, like, and again, I just feel like that points to something that I have 11 and 12-year-old kids who would prefer connections over feature films. That's a 40-year-old educational material. Bruce?
One of the things that whole idea and this whole discussion points to me is that there's so much going on in between classes, out in the hallways, if it's a physical class, the time that the kids are not actually in the classroom or actually be teaching, where there is all kinds of learning going on. And it seems to me we need to be more aware of how to make use of that, how to have things happen for the students that is not just downtime or lost time.
Well, the tricky thing there, though, is just I've done this in events, is you can also oversaturate the attendee. So I've gotten into this thing where I want to keep everybody in active listening all the time for 5 hours or 6 hours straight. And so I create something. I have this thing called ice cream first, you know, dessert first training, where I'm just constantly doing things that are fun, you know, that are connected to what I'm doing, just constantly. And it overstimulates them to where that they are, no one wants to go to the bathroom. No one wants to leave the room. No one wants, because I've packed it so cool with things that they're afraid they're going to miss, that it actually created a lot of stress. So it was an interesting thing that it creates a lot of stress for them, because if you pack it so tightly that it winds everybody up, because they don't feel like they can ever walk out. They can't leave. They can't check their email. They can't check. So you can actually make I can tell you from experience, you can make a thing that'll keep people hooked for 5 or 6 hours straight, you know, with production value and interesting pieces and conversation. No one wants to miss any of it. And so what happens is, but it creates a lot of stress that you just need to give people. Even when we started doing the long Saturdays, the first Saturday or two, we went straight and we did it, but it was very hard on everybody. And then we learned, let's take 10-minute breaks. It was a lot better. So giving people a pace, you know, you just have to, we have to think about how to pace that time where they feel like there's truly some downtime, whether what they do with it or not, but really like they can turn off for a minute and then come back, I think is important too. Bruce?
I agree. That's a good way to control it and balance it. But as you were describing the circumstance you were talking about, it sounds an awful lot like the games that these kids play, where they can go on 5-6 hours at a time, completely involved in it, and let them worry about when they go to the bathroom or whether they even go to the bathroom. It just seems to me that the more we can get toward that experience for people, that opportunity, the better off things are going to be with the current situation we're in.
And again, I think that to get back to the things I've talked about in the past, great movies and great games takes up a lot of time. It gives you time to have discussion and projects. You know, like those are the, you know, because there's a lot of things that are self-maintained, real names, if they're going to interact in a platform. Next question.
Chris Clark asks, virtual schooling has made much more of what teachers do much more visible and public. Some of this brings appreciation. Some of this is nastily critical. How is this playing out in your school system?
I know as a parent, after the first couple of days, I decided, or after the first couple of weeks, I decided not to look. Like, I just don't, you know, I just, because I was really critical. You know, like I was really like, this is a mess and this is, you know, whatever. And I was frustrated. And then I felt like the teachers just needed space. You know, they just needed space to figure it out. You know, like, and it doesn't help for me to pick at everything that they're doing. I think that was the thing that I, as a parent, decided. But I do think it's hard for teachers right now because parents can just look from the side. I mean, my teachers never knew that they were, my kids' teachers didn't know I was there, you know, because I'm just standing. I just know what the camera angle is, you know, so I know if I'm in frame or not. And I just sit there and watch to see how it was going. And it was, you know, a disaster. You know, like it was someone who runs events, you know, like I see most events look like a disaster to me. So the individual teachers, and at first I was angry. And then after that, I just had a lot of mercy, just realize how hard it is, because I have whole teams that do this, you know, and the teachers are sitting there trying to do this on their own. It's just impossible, you know, like they're just in an impossible position. Go ahead, Emily.
And how much of that changed because you were hanging out with us?
Oh, it completely changed it. This Saturday, these Saturdays is what changed it for me. It's just, you know, getting, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, because we're starting to get like, you know, September rolled by and we didn't get too much. A lot of, you know, occasionally a parent would complain about teachers using multiple systems. So like our districts have Seesaw and Schoology, and some stuff would get posted here and some stuff would get posted there. And the parents are like, I don't know which way to look. Or if they had multiple kids, you know, we're here, you know, this class is on this learning management system, this kid's on this one, so I have to look in multiple places. Can we just have one? There wasn't too much negative feedback about what was going on in the classes virtually. But then I think in October, since October started, people have started to see, okay, they just needed to find that rhythm or whatever it is. And then it changed again, because then we went to hybrid and, you know, 25% of the kids are in on one day, and then the next day is a different 25% through the week. And so then that was another disruption to the process, and parents were a little antsy about it, but I see them calming down again. But now the numbers in New York are climbing and parents are like, okay, so when are we going remote again? And it's just like, well, we don't know yet. Just, you know, take it day by day. But I think, you know, they're calming down. I think everybody's calming down, but a lot of times that quick to judge and like, we should have had it figured out on day one kind of attitude to the teachers was unfair. And even to the districts, because it wasn't one plan we had to come up with, it was 3 plans. And then we had to train everybody on everything. Then we had to purchase things. And like, we still have a couple of districts that ordered stuff in July that isn't scheduled to come in till the end of November to make it better, you know, because everybody was doing it. So just grace, a lot of grace.
Yeah. And my biggest frustration with my school system is just that they keep on changing their mind. I just wish that they would just say, we're just going to do virtual until the end of the school year. And that's just the way it's going to be. And then everyone just aligns to what it's the zigzagging. Like we're told, okay, now it's November 1st and now it's going to be, you know, but we know, and then it won't be. And then no one can plan anything when you do that. And as someone who runs productions and logistics, zigzag is devastating. You know, like it's devastating to anything is the zigzag. You just make a decision and then work through it. Go ahead, Aaron.
So the biggest thing that I found to make everything more positive is almost over communication with parents. I set up a very short survey on Google Forms and pushed it out to parents, asking them how their kids felt on a daily basis, if they wanted more paper versus digital, and anything that they had to ask. And I feel like that kind of flushed out some concerns or questions that they had, so then I could just address them individually. So since then, I really haven't heard too much, and they seem pretty happy. So
I will say that as a parent, I know way more about where my kids are now than I did when they were going to school. I hope that that doesn't get lost when it goes back, whenever that happens, because now that it's all digitized and now that it's all online and everything else, as a teacher, we're much clearer of what they're doing well in and what they're not doing well in than we were before. You know, and all that paper. Oh my gosh. Like it was just because my kids lost it all the time. My son, my son takes after me, loses paper, you know, all the time. And so it was just like this, we just never knew what was happening. And now we know what's happening on a real time, you know, day to day, we know what's happening. And so that's, I think, part of what we can see is you know, in the virtualization of school is that data starts to become much more available. Next question.
Stevie asks, what are some good wide angle cameras that are under $500 that can be used to stream the classroom?
GoPro, Huddle Cam, Brio. Are you looking for ones that stream that are self-contained? Stevie?
No, I was no, actually, for our setup, because especially with the issues with adding district, you know, Wi-Fi onto their devices, it'd be nice for it to be, you know, piped into their computers and then able to use from that setup.
I would say a Huddle Cam is probably the best because you can control the field of view with a little controller. You know, you could do it also with a Brio, but this gets into, you know, I use a lot of Brios, but the Huddle Cams are a little bit bigger. They're $300. And the big thing is that you've got that controller that Idelson is showing right now. John Idelson is showing. And so you can pan and tilt, zoom in and out, and you can save presets to it. And it has HDMI and USB out. So you can plug it into your computer, or you can plug it into a monitor, or you can plug it into something else that's going to stream it, or, you know, there's all kinds of options. But for what you're talking about for classrooms, I think that the Huddle Cam would probably be perfect. So that's I don't know if anybody else has any other opinion about it, but I think that's probably the best camera out there for what you're trying to do. Next question.
Aaron Graham asks, best places to find project-based learning ideas for remote upper elementary, 3 to 5 grade.
John Idelson and Emily.
It's a site called Digital Promise, and I'll put it into the web link. And they have what they call challenge-based learning. They don't call it problem-based learning, but Digital Promise.
Emily?
Not specific for digital, but you could easily change some of them over using the G Suite of tools. Would be like PBL Works has some good ones, PBL Project, the Buck Institute, and HyperDocs. So if you go to the HyperDocs website, they have templates already built. And there's one specifically I'm remembering that had to do with electricity, and like the kids had to solve a problem of lighting. And they created soda lights for houses or something. Like they put them in the roof of, it caught sunlight and brought light into a room. And I think it was in Africa. They were trying to make light indoors for the kids so that they could write. And so it goes through all that kind of like an introduction, and then here's the problem, and here's what you need to know about the problem. Now go solve it with what you know. So using those websites, I think all would work really well, you know, to get some ideas. I don't have any that like where the stuff's already been built, unfortunately.
Next question.
Tony Mobley asks, has digital instruction kits changed since school has progressed?
Anything new? I'll go ahead, Stevie.
Not necessarily. A lot of the stuff is just getting a lot better at doing the job that we need it to do. Like I said, I think we said this in one of the other sessions. You know, a lot of the bigger companies are actually listening and trying to make the adjustment, sometimes a little too fast because it breaks the stuff like it did with Teams a few weeks ago. But at least it's becoming a little bit more approachable to our especially our younger students. So our elementary students, that's been the biggest, I think, hurdle. Getting through to the IT side of things, like, hey, yes, it works great for a high school, you know, college, you know, middle school, but a little kid who can't read the screen, that's not going to work for them. So it's been getting better for sure.
Next question.
Laura Thompson asks, outside of the classroom, what virtual platform support services are working well to engage students, like virtual writing centers or virtual tutoring?
virtual tutoring. You cut off there a little quick. Any external sites that are the people know of that are doing well in that area? Might have stumped us. The virtual writing centers. One that I'm going to try to go ahead, Emily.
I don't have one specifically for writing or the specifics of her question. However, Fiveable is a website for AP prep where they're doing students that are taking AP classes can go for extra help, but it's set up in this really amazing style of back and forth between students and instructors. And they talk about questions. They have trivia nights. They have how to get a 5 on an essay. This is what you need to do. And they do like a little webinar on it. But it's all interactive. And I believe like if you watch it live, it's free. But if you want access to the courses after the fact, you have to pay $5 a month. But what's nice about it is you can pay the $5 for the month of April before you take the test in May, but only pay for that month if you wanted, or you can pay for it continuously. It's very flexible is basically what I'm trying to say. So I'm just wondering if there's something out there like that, that would be for all content areas.
John Middleton.
The sort of gold standard that we've used in higher ed is the Purdue Writing Lab, and they have OWL, which is the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and that lab does writing, teaching, writing, research, grammar, mechanics, style guides, ESL. It's a wonderful resource on the web. I put it into the Discord.
That's great.
Or I mean into the chat here.
Next question.
Emily Russo asks, anyone have experience with the Neat bar for Zoom? We are getting them installed in our classrooms.
Emily, what's the Neat bar? I don't even know what it is.
Somehow it's connected to Zoom. I don't really know about it. I just know that it's some sort of sound, like it allows the kids to sound like they're all being mic'd. John might be able to help us better than me because I just found out about it on Friday, which is why I asked the question. But it's some sort of sound system for Zoom meetings.
Go ahead, John.
Guy, are you showing it there?
Yeah, it looks like it's a Zoom room with the camera and integrated microphone and soundbar all in one. And then you've got the controller. It looks like it's $2,500. They're even doing these things as a service now where they'll do $100 a month for these. And it's basically, yeah, a Zoom room, and you add your own TVs or monitors. And the only bad thing is the microphones are going to be kind of tough to use from a distance. So that's
I played with it. It's a sound bar with a camera in it, but they work very closely with Zoom, so it's very well built, works very well, and the sound audio focusing is pretty good. But yeah,
one thing that I think that schools and companies, as someone who, if you've seen any of my tweets about conference calls or even my things, I am for a decade I've been vicious about, I can't understand what people are saying on the other side of a conference call, and this is in big companies. And I think that there is a form over function thing that people have done where they want shiny conference rooms that look pretty, but they don't think about what that sounds like when the mic is far away from people. And I think that probably the cheapest, if you're doing hybrid classes, one of the cheapest things you could do for all the classrooms is find ways to put baffling, some sort of baffling on the classrooms to reduce reflection, and it's not something that I think is going to show up for schools is like, oh, we should baffle the rooms. But if you're going to do this where you're going to have not that many mics for a long period of time in hybrids, finding ways to put soft materials on the walls and on the floor and on the ceiling. And I would build, I don't build rooms that don't do that at this point. Like if I'm going to do anything that projects out, it's going to be soft everywhere, and I, for 2 decades, you can always tell it's my office because there's baffling, because it just takes all the work off of the mic. With the reason that you can't turn the mics up for something is because of the reflections. You're picking up reflection, and so you take that reflection away and you can get an awful lot out of a mic 6 feet away, 10 feet away, even 20 feet away, if you don't have a lot of reflection. Emily?
So we had the Nareva board in our classroom, like our test model classroom, which has this like virtual microphone sound. And what the idea was is that no matter where you were in the room, it sounded like you had that you were personally mic'd. And I was just wondering if this neat thing kind of works the same or not, if anyone knew.
It does attempt to do that. I mean, I think whereas Triangle always says it's physics, you have to be close to the microphone to sound good. Yeah. But they do a pretty good job with that one. It is the acoustics of the room that affect it greatly. In the room I use it, has very good acoustics. It has fabric around it, and it worked pretty well.
Next question.
Ken Kersey asks, what kind of differences have you seen in this? Sorry, that just jumped on me. What kind of differences have you seen in the students this semester?
So Ken, what do you, just the change in how students interact?
Yeah, I think there's been a big difference, just their reaction to everything that's going on around here. And it's sort of changed the way I teach some. I'm not trying to push stuff as much as possible, as much as I did before. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering if other people have seen these kind of change, the anxiety level, all of this stuff just kind of building on top of other things, maybe.
Laura?
As an advisor, I'm starting to see, we had an 8-week course that I use as my barometer that most students in previous semesters have always passed and done very well with. I'm not seeing the success in courses this semester. Yes, it's only the 8-week semester. We'll have to see how the 15-week pans out in December, but students are that I really see that at the college level, that interaction between upperclassmen and lowerclassmen is not happening, and students are not getting the outside the classroom is affecting in the classroom and their grades.
Mm-hmm. I think I can't say that my kids are more excited or anything or more engaged as a parent. I think they've just gotten used to the new norm. Like they're not, again, they're just kind of dealing with it and getting their work done. And, I think it was chaos at the beginning, and now they don't think it's necessarily great, but it's a known, it's become like known entity of this is what I can expect from the class. And then they're not thinking about it much anymore. Aaron?
So with my students, since they chose remote, I feel like the anxiety for them is less. And these are the students who have really good tech skills and have learned a lot of great tech skills as we've gone through. I even caught one of my students in a breakout room when I was popping in. She said, I don't know how to get there through ClassLink. And one of the students said, oh, I'll share my screen and teach you how to do it. So I said, okay, if you're teaching them, then I'll go to the next room.
Right. No, it's great. I think that, by the way, just as an aside, I think students helping other students is one of the most underutilized thing in education at all levels, and it's why I spend so much time when I build community systems, they're all built around all of us. It's like a peer-to-peer Pixel Core before this, all of the things that I mean, everything I do is how do you get peer-to-peer happening as fast as possible? Because I think we underestimate what kids can do and how quickly they can teach each other how to do that and how much more they learn and how much better they get at it because they're teaching somebody else how to do it. Emily?
Yeah, the younger kids, like K through 6, I haven't seen like as much negative attitudes towards the hybrid or anything. Like they seem to have adjusted really well. The kids that seem to be the most pissed off are the high school kids. And I think that they, in addition to like having to be more responsible, like logging in at certain times, because a lot of our districts are keeping the bell schedule and things like that, is that they miss the socialization and they feel like they're being cheated out of an experience. And even the freshmen feel that way because it's like, oh, I was supposed to be in high school now, and now I'm online. And so the teachers are reporting that the kids are, at least showing up, attendance is okay. And like, that's not the huge issues we were having in the spring where they all just zoned out. But when you talk to the kids themselves and you're like, how's it going? Like, what would you want to see if you could have anything you want? And they're like, I want to be back in school. And I'm like, okay, but like, it's just it's interesting to see that like that cheated feeling, and it hurts that, they're like, we're not even going to have prom this year probably because of this stupid thing. And I'm like, well, what else could we do?
Right. And about the temperature of their coffee. Anyway, next question.
Craig Hibbard asks, the 10-minute Q&A is a terrific way to start and set a tone. How about informally starting on the hour with the 10-minute Q&A, but formally starting the meeting 10 minutes later? Benefits without having to show up 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can do that. I was playing a game. You could just definitely open. You could open up with conversation. Open up with Q&A. I mean, that's all that really is. Just open the class with Q&A of what students are trying to figure out. Here's the thing about that is that it's just generally there are students that don't want to raise their hand, but most of the students have the same questions. Especially when you're on a very focused amount, you're working with ratios or you're working with, pronouns or whatever that is that you're working with. There aren't that many questions. Like it was. There are. I don't understand how this connects but there are and so opening it up when you're answering in front of everyone. Some students are, and again, part of that's also creating an environment where it's safe to do that. Like we've created an environment here where I think most people feel like they could ask almost anything because they do. And so like I think the proof of it is that we accept every question, and we don't just say, oh, you shouldn't have asked that, or like whatever. And we create an environment where it's safe to ask questions. I create in my teams when I create an environment. I work very hard. I don't know if I always do it, but I work very hard. And I definitely did not always do it. But I've learned to work very hard at encouraging complaints. So I want to know what's not working, and I don't want it to I don't get, I do everything I can not to get frustrated with people asking me things that maybe they should have known, or maybe they could have known, or whatever, or they could have Googled. I'm a little tweaky about Google. Like if I Google it in a minute, I might tell you that I Googled it, in a joke, but outside of that, making it a safe place for students. And what happens is you have the adventurous students with everything. It's all about making an example, a positive example out of people who are adventurous, to get the people in the middle to move forward, to get the people at the back to move forward. And that's whether you're trying to move a plan into an organization. You don't focus on trying to get the people who don't agree with you to do it. You find the people that do, and you scheme. You find the people who are excited about it and you scheme with them. Like, let's figure this out. And then you create examples, and then the people that were not quite sure, now they're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then you just drag the other ones along. They don't have any choice anymore because they're now in the minority. So, but you're always looking for the ones that are passionate and agree with you. And then you just try to work with them. I think the mistake we make is like, how do we get everybody to do it? Well, you don't get everybody to do it. You get the ones that are excited about it. Laura?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of something you were saying about that safe environment. I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on that. I jumped in specifically this morning with that in mind to ask the question, the one question I asked before we went live, because I knew that there'd be a little bit of a different when we weren't on YouTube, when we weren't. And I felt safe asking that question at that point, kind of knowing when we got to the second hour where it was going to be. And I enjoy that first 40 minutes.
We're much more blunt. We're much more blunt before we go on YouTube.
Not only that, but it was just kind of like, okay, now I know what I kind of get the temperature of what it's going to look like in the second hour. And it may not have been fair to do that, but it really was helpful to me.
We did to the point Laura asked that question. We spent 15 minutes talking about that question before the second hour, and we got our more revolutionary or incendiary opinions out before the general discussion, because I had a much different answer in the first hour.
We were much more mellow.
Much more mellow.
Just like pause before
hit. So it was nice to get it before 6, so I know I could just open fire.
But
anyway,
it was that's kind of what I'm talking about. That pre-show gives you that safety. I didn't necessarily want some of what I said floating out there on YouTube the first time around, and I value that. And it's usually a smaller, tighter group, and I really value that time before we go to YouTube.
And I think the thing is that I wanted to keep it like I wanted to keep the whole thing off of YouTube. you know, you guys broke me down and I finally put it up there, but I wouldn't if it was, there was enough requests and it was constant enough that I went ahead and put it on YouTube. And I see the value of it to some degree, but I would prefer to have no recording, no nothing, no record of it, and just have it be what it is in that moment and then move on. And so that's what the 6 to 7 hour is for me, is just or 6 to 6:40 is that I keep it. That's like my little safe space where we can all just sit around and talk. And when I, you know, when I get out of this production, I might even make it a little earlier. Well, I can't do it right now because I have meetings. I start meetings at 4, and so I have meetings from 4 a.m. until 5:30, and then I prep for the 6 o'clock, and then we go in. So it's so I can't add any more. That space is being held for the moment. Chris?
I wanted to make a comment about this, establishing a culture of question asking or complaining, as you put it, with your teams. A brilliant example of that, or what can happen in the absence of that culture, is there are many examples of passenger plane crashes that happen because the captain was distracted or mistaken about where he was, and the more junior people in the cockpit who realized that they were intruding on Russian airspace or whatever the case was, were afraid to contradict the captain or to, because it was such a hierarchical organization in the cockpit, and that was the tradition in that culture. And so they went down in flames because the navigator or the co-pilot were afraid to break the taboo of questioning Alex's judgment.
Well, in corporate world, in the world, we see this just all the time. You know, like I, you know, because I work at very high levels where I'm working with the CEO of a very large company directly, you know, sometimes a world leader directly, and the support staff around them spends a lot of time shielding them from everything and making decisions so that, you know, that they don't want to ask about. And then when you actually talk to them, they're completely reasonable. You know, like they're just like, no, and they don't understand why we even had that conversation, you know. And when they're given the opportunity. Now, so there's this fear. I mean, especially when people get up to a certain level, there's always just this fear that you're gonna tweak it. You know, I talk to people about it. I was like, you know, you have people they have a 401k and they've got a really good job and they have this job until they screw it up badly. And so there's definitely some risk adverse levels of stuff, but it definitely means that a lot of things stay in place and a lot of mistakes get made because no one wants to ask. And so I can't say that I'm perfect at it. I mean, but I do work pretty hard at trying to engender an environment where people are asking questions and pushing at things. You know, when we're moving really fast, I can't have that happen. Like we're trying to get a production done, using people to do what we're supposed to do. But we try to make it so that people are asking those questions all the time. And it's a hard thing to do. And it's definitely not what I'm thrown to. Like my natural instinct is to push back pretty painfully. And so it's a constant education. Next question.
Earl asks, thinking of running a class like office hours and thinking of a way to gamify that process by keeping score per student of the most popular voted on question. If this works, I am wondering if the Mukana system can anonymize from the other students, not the teacher, the question submitter.
It can. We can do a lot of those things. I don't recommend. This gets back into like being very, very careful of positive reinforcement. But when you start, whatever you start scoring will become what they focus on. So when we start, you know, and you just have to know that as soon as you start measuring something, everyone goes towards the measurement. And so you want to be careful of what you measure. It is what I call fissionable material. You know, it's a nuclear device. You know, so if I say fissionable material, it's like super dangerous. So you can definitely do it, and teachers get into positive reinforcement because the problem really is that in the short term it works, in the long term it almost never works. You know, what works is passion around the subject matter. You know, like that is, you know, that's what, you know, that's the thing that works, you know, is finding ways to be passionate about the subject matter. And all other things that we do, like if you even look at the look that I did to get everybody to show up on time, I'm not doing anything other than doing something that's interesting around the subject matter that happens before the class or at the beginning of the class or whatever. But I try to keep focused on all of my process tools to move things forward is all about acknowledging people and acknowledging what they're excited about and hopefully being excited about the subject. And that's all we're doing here, right? Like we're kind of careful not to measure a lot of things and not to, do things that are, because it's just a really, it's not that I never do it, but I'm very, even with my kids, I'm super, and I think maybe because I was super sensitive. I had a grandfather that was, man, he was all about strings. Like he was just all, and so everything he did for you, you knew that that was a string that was now attached to you that would eventually be pulled. And so I think that trained me to be very careful about putting strings in that can be that look like that. Go ahead, Chris, and then Stephen.
I agree with your concern about what gets measured gets focused on, often to the exclusion of everything else, and everything else is usually pretty important. Right. One of the techniques for establishing that culture of positive complexity is to make storytelling a highly valued product of our interactions, so that storytelling trumps statistics. Mm-hmm. People can visualize the people, the context, the situation. People love stories, and if you make it clear as a leader or administrator that what you're looking for are good stories about your students, about your teachers, about how this policy is playing out in practice, people will generate good stories, right? Valuable stories, which you in turn can use to work with the public or work with the school board or work with whoever. And it's good for morale for the whole organization. If it's generating good stories, that's much more engaging than good numbers. And police departments should adopt this instead of focusing so much on statistics that could be manipulated. It could be narrowing their
if you look at
focus.
The things that I think probably do the best for a lot of police officers is those videos of them playing basketball with kids and the things where they're doing something that, examples, to your point, that show that it's not all that way. Stephen, real quick, and then we're going to go to the last question.
Yeah, like Chris said, what gets measured gets done, and it's amazing where all the energy is to make those numbers come out right and what breaks all over the place.
And everyone just manipulates score. They manipulate the system pretty quickly. And one of the things that, again, there can be more subtle things. So when we used to do challenges within the Pixel Core, which I hope to bring back here as well, and we started playing with them with the coffee challenge, but we'll do a lot more of that once I get through the next couple of weeks. There wasn't a score that was required. There may be some scoring that I play with in the future, but it's all going to be around performance of that thing. But we had hundreds of people taking the challenge, and what they were excited about was the fact that they got to think about the same thing at the same time with everyone and get their questions answered about that at the same time. And the ones that did really well, they got some recognition. Everybody knew him. Like everybody knew that Roger Nobbs was someone who did a lot of our challenges, and he just cleaned our clocks all the time. He's an incredible artist out of Switzerland. And he would always, just do these incredible pieces, but everyone knew him as the guy that does the great whatever. And I think that was an interesting positive reinforcement for him that he earned by just doing a good job. Anyway, last question.
Last question from Tony Mobley. Any success stories to share?
Go ahead, John Preto.
This is kind of tangential, but I think Zoomtopia this week was a huge success story as it relates to virtual events. I don't know, John, did you guys get the final numbers yet? Comparatively to last year, it was gigantically attended, well executed. The production was better, wasn't perfect, but it was way better than it was.
Well, last year was still a physical event.
Physical event. Yeah. But it just goes to show you the audience reach versus a physical event, which Alex has been saying, preaching all along. They should have broke it up and made it longer. Absolutely. Push those tracks into multiple days.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that make it 2 weeks or just make it, again, my whole thing is I just think that organizations really need to think about a weekly strategy minimum, if not a daily strategy, a weekly strategy. That is, we're having these discussions with people all the time. And maybe there's a bigger one where we have it, but it's just weekly strategies because it does a couple things. One is you don't have to make sure that the whole system works day one. Like you're building all this stuff and then does it work? You have to do all this testing, but you don't know if it's going to work under scale. You don't know if it's going to work with that many people or it's going to be interesting. All that goes away. You know, you're doing it all the time. Like if you look at the way we started one way and now we've got this QA system that you guys make suggestions and we put them in, and we've got everybody's got mics and cameras and things, and that all evolves, you know, like it all just kind of, you know, it's an evolution of that process. And I think that we can, I think all organizations should be thinking about an ongoing discussion with their customers, not an event, you know, but I do think that they did better at it. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I'll just answer John's question. Yes, there were more people there than the physical event. I can safely say that.
Yeah.
And I can also say they're very relieved to have it over. And Alex, I agree with good if they spread it out over 2 weeks. I'm not sure the Zoomers would have wanted to spread it over 2 weeks. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety.
But again, the pressure goes down when you start to, I think the pressure goes down when you start doing it all the time. You know, then it becomes something that's well known. It's a process. You get into a system. I think. Go ahead, Stevie.
Just one thing that we did this week that I think was major success with all the craziness that was going on. I host a team of over 700 teachers for our district. So we bring them all in there. We answer questions. We do a whole bunch of stuff with them, post information for them. And since we're now on campus, we got rid of a channel called the Mac channel because there's no Macs on our site, and we switched it over to success stories. I know I was going to get hit by that one, but we switched it over just recently to success stories. And you know, I was a little concerned that day one nothing happened, but day two, day three, we started to see stories popping in. And it was good to now see something different besides just, oh, this doesn't work. This isn't working. These kids aren't here. This isn't, how do we fix that? And now seeing like, oh, this is actually working. And we're actually seeing a lot of movement into that space as well. So it's been really, really fun to see.
That's great. John Edelson.
You know, I'm not teaching because I'm retired, but I'm with this faculty support group. And we had what was our success stories. And one of the faculty members' success is we're still here, we're meeting, we're holding classes, and we could joke. And that was success.
That's good. I do think that hopefully we keep on. I mean, our little group here keeps on getting better. You know, go, Trevor. You got another. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I actually stole this concept a little bit. I don't do it nearly as well as you all do. But we actually started hosting this week actually hosting a Q&A for teachers, and anyone can show up, anyone can ask any question. And then we try to actually just answer it on the spot. We're streaming it, we're recording it and posting it to our YouTube channels. That way we can get that. We just have that, you know, today the stupid thing broke and we don't know why. And then we have a team on top of myself that are teachers that help with tech. But we actually had really positive feedback. It was actually a great thing to do.
I think it's one of the keys to the operation. Like I think that having teachers, I think we're doing it in a micro sense right now. But having school districts and so on and so forth cross-pollinating, like what are people figuring out? Because I guarantee we keep on hearing these little stories. This teacher's figured out how to get to entertain the students. These teachers have figured out how to do this. But the key is for all the other teachers that want to be successful, they all want to be successful. How do we make sure that they get those little tips and think through those things? And so I think that more like this would make a huge difference. Go ahead, Aaron.
So a couple of success stories I've had is very basic, from kids now turning in all their work on Google Classroom to having discussions back and forth. I think that's a huge piece. And then having the kids get to know each other through fun little activities that we do in the morning. Last week, one of my kids had a cup of tea and she was just drinking it. And since I love tea with my giant mug, I asked her, what tea are you drinking? And that spawned a 30-minute discussion about tea. And all through the chat was, this is the tea I drink. This is the tea I drink. And just to have that connection throughout all the kids, even though they're not even at the same school, was a really cool concept.
We did one of the PixCore challenges was to build HDR 360s. This is back in 2005. And so they're doing, how do you take pictures around and stitch them together and do HDR with them? It was okay to teach everybody HDR, but we saw everybody's backyard. Like everybody, and it was just amazing. Like just see people from all over the world. You just felt like you knew them after that. So I definitely think that connection is useful. I found that with the coffee too. I love the fact that we saw how all these people made, everybody here, or all the people that did it here, how they made their coffee, how they approached it, what was important. I just thought that the coffee challenge was useful, and we'll do some more of that. But getting to know each person was as important or more important than the coffee. Roscoe?
Yeah, Trevor, I was just going to ask, did you feel your district has the technical support for all the teachers? Did they have the resources they needed most of the time?
We are getting there. For us, we found there's just a huge technology gap, and the best teachers are doing their best, and we're trying to help the ones that don't have the tech. We have found there's some that they're just struggling, and we're not sure how to solve it, but they're getting there. It's a long process. I think everyone would like the idea that you just, here's everything, here's a quick how-to and go, and it just isn't that fast. It's a long iterative process.
Do you think the teachers are open to coming to an office hours and asking questions, or are they just not even really sure what to ask at this point?
It depends. I think we have some who are, and some who I've even mentioned about having this and seeing if they want to get in and join. I think there's others where there's more of a, it's not on my work hour mentality. We probably would never see them outside of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And we have new faces. Trevor, Steve, I think you've been here before, but good to have you back. But for it's good to see you again, Kent and Emily, of course. Emily, we were like, there was a week where you were gone, and we were like, what happened to Emily? And Chris, I'm glad you're feeling better. It's good to see you, Tony and Bruce and Stevie. It's always it's good. Yours is always a little different. Your setup is just a little like it's constantly evolving. I like that. And Aaron, it's great to have you here. And Laura, it's good to see you jump in. Of course, Roscoe, a regular, and so I just think that in Brian and TJ's, John, I mean, it's just like this little group that we've kind of built up, and it's such a incredible gamut, that we're getting of the education system right now that I don't know if it exists anywhere else. I mean, we're all dealing with different verticals and our own problems, but I think it's definitely completely changing how I view it. You'll notice that I was much more, I still have some opinions, but I was much more opinionated at the beginning than I am now, where, oftentimes you get your your questions answered, but your answers questioned as well. And I think that seeing what it's like it's not that I've changed so much where I think we should go, but it definitely has had me much more clear of the realities of where we are, and I think that that's been super, super valuable. Hopefully it's serving your needs, as far as figuring this out. But I think that as we keep on doing it, I think we're going to keep on coming up with things. And I think something's going to pop out of this. I just don't know what yet. John?
Well, I just want to say it's been a long time since we've heard the word dumpster fire, but I do feel we're getting heat, warmth, and life out of these discussions without it being a dumpster fire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, wherever that time zone is for you. And I just want to thank TJ for taking on the editing route, and for Guy taking on the Q&A. We put some new faces in there, and everybody did great. And so I'll see many of you tomorrow morning. All right. Bye-bye. And Guy, you need to just go ahead and kill it or send it back to me.